Chapter 928. Goshen couldn't stand the fact that a rooster hatched from an egg from the upper realm was so cocky and boastful. As the saying goes, a mountain can't accommodate two tigers. If a contract beast is so cocky, how am I, the main character and master, going to survive? Wow! So cute. Lu Wanshur, who was busy, walked out and saw the little guy with blue feathers. She happily walked up and was about to lift it up. "Woman," the little rooster said, "don't touch me." Lu Wanshur stopped and said, "Patriarch, such a cute little rooster. Are you really going to stir-fry it? Look, it's so cocky, it has to be stir-fried. But it's too small. It won't be enough for Patriarch alone." What she meant was that stir-frying it wasn't impossible. But there had to be enough for the disciples to taste it. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, "Let's keep it for a while, then stir-fry it after it's fattened up." "Humph," the little rooster said proudly. "I'm the descendant of a divine beast that's immune to fire and water." Jun Changshao, who had just retracted his thoughts, saw its arrogant and annoying eyes, and his temper rose again. "Beep beep. Bring the pot of oil over. I want to see how it's immune to fire and water." That's not good, right? Although Lu Wanshur said that her body was very honest. She placed the big pot on the stove and poured the peanut oil that was still lacking an exclusive title for the time being. TSK. The little rooster hugged its wings together and stood there like it didn't recognize anyone. "Girl, start the fire." "Wait." Jun Changshao changed his words and said, "I'll do it myself." Whoosh whoosh. In an instant, all kinds of divine and saint-tier flames poured into the stove, burning the cauldron wildly. The little rooster said in surprise, "This should be a special fire-type body. No wonder it's qualified to be my master." When Jun Changshao heard this, his anger flared up even more. "So I have to see if I'm qualified to be your master. Fine. Wait." Gudu. After a while, the oil in the pot started to boil. Shwa. Jun Changshao grabbed the little rooster and hung it above the pot. "Fried chicken is not bad. What flavor does Patriarch like?" "Cumin." "Yes." Lu Wanshur put the cumin powder on the chopping board. "Chili powder." "Yes." "Two demons." Little rooster, who was originally quite arrogant, felt the heat rising from the oil pot below, and immediately became a little timid. He said, "This young master is invulnerable to fire and water, not an ocean of oil. Stop talking nonsense. Get down." Shwa. Jun Changshao waved his hand and threw the little rooster down. Zizizi. The sound of frying oil could be heard. With the little rooster, which had fallen into the oil pan, seemed to have burned calories as it jumped up and down with its wings and claws. "God. Lu Wanshurs. That's not it." Lose to the agad to since he used the holy fire to heat it, the oil in the pot would definitely be boiling. Not to mention a newly hatched rooster. Even the purple craggy demon king's hand would be fried to a crisp by the explosion. This guy is quite capable. Whoa! The little rooster was still jumping up and down in the frying pan. It was still crying out, "Master, I was wrong, master, save me." Shwa. Jun Changshao waved his hand and removed the pressure on the pot. He didn't plan to fry the newly hatched contract beast. He just wanted to see if this guy was bragging. Now that it was dancing in the pot, it proved that it had some ability. Poochie. Without the pressure, the rooster jumped out of the pot and stood on the chopping board. Its claws were swollen and almost cooked. Jun Changshao sat down and said, "Tell me, what else do you have?" Since it was an opportunity left by Guanhai and mutated under his efforts, even if it was just a rooster, there should be something special. Otherwise, he could only fry it. "Master," the little guy wailed, "I really am a descendant of the vermilion bird." "A rooster can be related to the vermilion bird? Do you think I'm an idiot?" Jun Changshao said. "Sigh." The rooster sighed. "I don't know why I'm like this. It's completely different from the inherited memories." Inherited memories? Jun Changshao was confused. The system said, "Some mutated beasts gain inherited memories after birth." "So you're saying that you're not a rooster?" Jun Chang laughed. "Yes." The rooster collapsed. "I should be in a peacock form." "Oh, is that so?" Jun Changshao looked at it suspiciously. The system said, "Host, I think there might be a problem with the incubator." If the mutation is successful, it might change form. There's such a thing. Jun Changshao was shocked. The system continued. The Purple King once said that the baby dragon was stolen from the dragon's territory, and it was an extremely rare 5-clawed divine dragon. It hatched into a lizard-like form. Jun Changshao frowned. So you're saying that if it hatches normally, it might hatch into a 5-clawed divine dragon. But if it mutates in the incubator, its form will change? Correct, the system answered. The reason it came to this conclusion was because of the second incubation. The opportunity left by a powerful being from the upper realm was a rooster. This was definitely illogical and embarrassing. Combined with the incubation process of the baby dragon, he couldn't help but guess that the incubator not only had a mutation mechanism, but also a transformation mechanism. If that's the case, then it's a bit of a scam. Jun Changshao didn't care about its form and said, I don't care if you're a rooster or a descendant of the vermilion bird. You must prove your worth with your strength otherwise. He pointed at the pot of oil and said, Get in. I have strength, I have strength. The little rooster said, I can crow every day at a fixed time to wake up the sleeping humans and let them get up to work. Jun Changshao broke down. With your strength, even the most ordinary rooster can do it. Ordinary roosters can't do it. If you don't believe me, please listen carefully, master. The little rooster supported itself with one leg, and then took a deep breath before raising its head and crowing. Woo woo woo, woo, woo. The space trembled and turned into ripples that spread outward, instantly enveloping the entire sect of all times, causing the disciples who were cultivating to be shocked. What's that sound? A rooster crowing. Oh my god, isn't it too loud? I feel like even Qingyang City can hear this shout, right? That's right. The residents of Green Sun City, who were hundreds of miles away, heard the roosters crowing. So they all looked in the direction of Mount Ironbone, their eyes filled with surprise. Swoosh! Peppa Wild Boar, who had been busy for half a day, just happened to have time to rest. When it heard the crowing, it immediately stood up and rushed to the wasteland, releasing its earth element to explore. The most amazing thing was that it didn't feel tired at all, even though it was originally very tired. It was the same for the disciples of the sect of all times. Some of the disciples who were trying to break through a small stage or a big stage and were having trouble stabilizing their state of mind heard the crowing and immediately entered the state of breakthrough. Jun Changshao also felt that the sound had the effect of refreshing and calming the mind. So he said in surprise, Is it really that amazing? Master, the little rooster said proudly. Can an ordinary rooster do that? Interesting. Jun Changshao touched his chin and smiled. I can make it crow every morning to wake the disciples up, then let them cultivate for the whole day. Chapter 929. The disciples of the sect of all times were very disciplined. Every morning, they would wake up on time, go to the gym, eat breakfast, and then start the day's training. There was no need to let the rooster crow. However, the voice of the hatchlings had the effect of refreshing and calming the mind, so it was actually quite good to shout at the top of his lungs every day. Ooh ooh ooh. The next day, when the first glimmer of dawn had just appeared, the little rooster was already at his post. Standing alone in the main hall, he raised his head and squawked. His voice reverberated throughout the entire sect. The disciples who were sleeping soundly got up and washed up when they heard the sound of fighting. Then they gathered at the training field, each of them full of energy. Not bad, not bad. Jun Changshao, who was standing in front of the main hall, saw that they were full of energy, and a smile appeared on his face. There were many martial arts facilities in the sect. Although they could help the disciples break through faster, they could only become stronger if they put all their energy into cultivation. Ah! Master, save me. At this moment, a cry for help came from above the main hall. Where did this wild chicken come from? How dare you disturb this great ant's sleep? The barefooted Xiao Maxian, who was wearing loose pajamas, grabbed the rooster and began to crazily grind it against the tiles. For a time, chicken feathers flew everywhere. Scram! Little Long Long jumped up and said coldly, Let me teach him a lesson. TSK. Xiao Maxian rolled her eyes at him, and then casually tossed the little rooster aside. She took a deep breath and said, Master said that I had to be reserved, that I had to be a lady. Shwa. Little Long Long waved his hand and grabbed the guy who had disturbed his sleep. Flames immediately erupted from his palm. Ah! After the sun rose, the little rooster curled up in a corner and wiped away his tears with his charred wings. He lamented in his heart, I'm a descendant of the vermilion bird. How could I be bullied like this? Swish! Suddenly, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. The weeping rooster immediately sensed that something was wrong. It hurriedly spread its wings and jumped up. However, just as it rose half a meter, it was instantly hit by the happy football. Then with a bang it sank into the wall. Strange. Li Fei, who was on the training grounds, was puzzled. Why is it jumping? Elder Wei. Jun Changshao stood outside the main hall and said, This little guy will stay with Peppa in the herb garden for the time being. Yes. As a result, the herb garden gained another member. Peppa the wild boar was in charge of exploring while Little Rooster was in charge of crowing. By the way, how's the new medicine coming along? Jun Changshao asked. Elder Wei said, It's all thanks to Pei Qi's hard work in reclaiming the land every day. Now the initial stage has been completed. The scale is also larger than before, so we can plant more medicinal herbs in batches. Medicinal herbs are very important to our sect. Elder Wei, you have to worry about them. Jun Changshao exhorted. Although he had the system and had set up many martial arts facilities, the number of disciples was increasing. In order for them to improve steadily, the most important thing was to refine all kinds of medicinal herbs. Elder Wei said, In the past few years, Sun Bukong and the others have also grown up. They will only grow faster and faster in terms of planting. Yes. Jun Changshao chatted with him for a while longer, before using the teleportation portal to enter the planar battlefield. During this period of time, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others had been building in the stronghold that was about a few dozen acres in size. Now they had begun to take shape. Whether it was a village or a town, the most important thing was the road. Therefore, there was a road in the central area that could allow 4 carriages to pass side by side. It was paved with limestone. Due to the limited area, there were very few buildings. If one wanted to get rich, they had to open the road first. In Li Qingyang's construction, this limestone road was the main street of the Starfall Continent stronghold. In the future, when the area expanded, it would be expanded with the main hall as the center. Not bad, not bad. After inspecting it, Jun Changshao nodded in satisfaction. He then flew out of the stronghold and headed toward the endless sky. The few times he came to the planar battlefield, he was either fighting or on the way to battle. He had not properly inspected this place, so he decided to go out and take a look today. Jun Changshao would not have dared to go out alone before he was sure of the power of the modified unstoppable blade. Now he was completely fearless. Look, it's that crazy guy who killed so many people. The Starfall Continent's god of slaughter has come out. Everyone run. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In a certain area of the battlefield, dozens of martial artists from the 2 existential planes were staring at each other. When they saw Jun Changshao fly over, they fled in panic like frightened rabbits. If it had been before the opportunity, they might have joined forces to fight the Starfall Continent. However, after learning that tens of thousands of existential planes martial artists had been killed, they could not summon any courage. Palace Master. In the main hall of the Scarlet Sea Continent stronghold, an elder hurriedly walked in and said with a serious expression, Jun Changshao has come out again. What? Hong Yao stood up in shock and said, Quick, quick, quick. Inform everyone that they are not allowed to leave the stronghold. The elder said, I've already given the order. Hong Yao sat down and recalled the scene of that guy wearing a mask and killing thousands of people. Cold sweat immediately appeared on his forehead. After the Lingyun continent learned that Jun Changshao had appeared on the battlefield, they quickly ordered their martial artists to hide in the stronghold and not go out without permission. To be able to scare the 2 existential planes to this extent, after the Battle of the Opportunity, Gosheng had really transformed into a great demon king on the battlefield that made martial artists tremble in fear. However, he was very annoyed now. As long as he flew to an area, all the martial artists would instantly disappear. How would he expand the stronghold in the future? Right now we haven't even reached the village scale. It will definitely take longer to develop to the scale of a town, Jun Changshao murmured. To be honest, not counting that period of time and the epic mission, this guy had only been on the battlefield for a few days. To be able to develop the stronghold to such a scale was already very fast. Sister, Jun Changshao asked, is there a faster way to increase the size of the stronghold? Yes, the female system's sweet voice came. There are many opportunities hidden in the battlefield. Dear participant, you can find them in advance and take them for yourself before the seal is unlocked. The area will automatically increase. How do I find them? Find them with your heart. Jun Changshao suddenly stopped. At the end of his vision, there was a tall mountain that seemed to be hidden in the clouds. At the top was a flag with the words vast continent written on it. Without a doubt, when he was flying around in boredom, he came to the vicinity of the stronghold of the vast continent. Jun Changshao released his spiritual senses and found that there were not only buildings comparable to cities on the mountain, but also layers of walls built on the mountain path. It was like a military fortress with mountains and rivers on one side. So he was quite shocked. This stronghold is amazing. Dear participant, the vast continent belongs to the first tier of existential planes, and is also the first batch of existential planes to enter. It's normal for it to have such a scale today, the female system said. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed and said, when can my falling star continent develop to such a scale? Wait, this area was clearly a plain area. Why was there a tall mountain all of a sudden? The female system said. They piled it up themselves. The terrain of the battlefield can be modified? As long as the participant has the means to modify the terrain, even if the stronghold is built high up in the sky, it won't be a problem. Built high up in the sky. Lord Changshao's eyes immediately lit up. That's pretty awesome. Swish. He gave up on visiting the battlefield and returned to the stronghold. After entering, he took out the terrain modification device and said, although this thing can't make the ground float, it can be propped up with formations. Chapter 930. Jun Changshao hurriedly returned to the stronghold after learning that the terrain of the planar battlefield could be changed. He prepared to use the terrain modification device to raise the safety zone, similar to the one on the vast continent. It couldn't be copied. It had to be innovated. As long as the participants have the means to modify the terrain, it won't be a problem to build the stronghold high up in the sky. The female system's words gave Jun Changshao a bold idea. He wanted to build the stronghold on the Starfall continent into a floating city. Huh? Li Qingyang was dumbfounded when he heard this. Building the stronghold in the sky with a formation? The patriarch's idea was too ridiculous. Whoosh! The terrain modification device flew out quickly and extended its mechanical claws like a spider. It attached itself to the ground and began modifying the terrain. Because it was inconvenient for construction, the disciples all stopped. However, they were a little surprised when they learned that the patriarch wanted to build a floating city. They were also a little expectant. Let's go back to the sect. Jun Changshao led the disciples back to the sect of all times. He then went to the formation peak to find Elder Zhen and told him his bold idea. Zhen Dejuan was silent for a moment. If we use a concealment formation and a defensive formation, we should be able to support the heavy ground. Not the ground, Jun Changshao said. It's the mountains. Zhen Dejuan's mouth twitched. A mountain is very heavy. Although the formation can support it, it will consume energy every second. Therefore, we will have to send people to maintain it at fixed times. Nothing permanent. Jun Changshao asked. No. Patriarch Hall Master Zhen Shengguan Xingyao said. We can set up the 5 elements formation in the Mystic 32 formations. This formation uses the power of the 5 elements to complement each other and can operate continuously. Zhen Dejuan was enlightened. That's right. There was a formation in the Mystic 32 formations called the 5 elements formation. Not only could it be used for defense, but it could also be used for attack. It could be said to be both offensive and defensive, because it used the power of the 5 elements. As long as it was set up, it would exist continuously. But, Zhen Diyuan said, without enough power of the 5 elements, it is very difficult to set up such a formation. Some of the formations in the mystic 32 formations required a specific type of energy to maintain. It wasn't something that could be operated just by knowing the formations and formations. I do, Jun Changshao said. During this period of time, he had been cultivating quite hard, especially activating the 5 elements body at all times to cultivate the power of the 5 elements in the spirit nucleus. Now it had already reached a small scale. The next day, Li Qingyang and the others once more entered the planar battlefield, but found themselves high up in the air. After a night of modification, the falling star continent stronghold had protruded to a height of at least 10,000 feet. In just a few days, the mountain peak in the sect had appeared, so everyone could face it calmly. Yi Xingchen and He Wudi were shocked. The Patriarch's topographical modification treasure could even modify a plane created by a mighty being from the upper realm. Its quality must be extraordinary. I have sinned, Jun Changshao said. Go down and lift the mountain. Yes. Xiao Ziji flew down and landed at the foot of the mountain. Whoosh whoosh. The earth element was released and seeped into the bottom of the mountain. The veins on his arms bulged as he lifted it up with a loud rumble. Truly, the strength to lift a mountain, and the aura to conquer the world. Raise it a little higher. Jun Changshao flew down and said. Whoosh. Xiao Ziji lifted the mountain with both hands and flew up. Higher. Whoosh. Higher. Whoosh. Kill. Kill. 1,000 miles away, dozens of martial artists from 2 planes met at a corner. Because of the enmity between them, they started killing each other without saying a word. Energy and light flashed recklessly. It was gorgeous and colorful. However, in the midst of the battle, one of the martial artists pointed into the distance and exclaimed, Look, what's that? Everyone looked over, and they were all dumbstruck. In the distant sky that he could see, there was an object slowly flying up into the sky. He squinted his eyes and observed carefully. He was sure that it was a mountain that wasn't too big. What's going on? That seems to be the stronghold of the falling star continent. Why is there a mountain flying up? Could this mountain be a supreme treasure? The 2 sides stopped fighting as their gazes locked onto the mountain that was slowly rising into the sky. Their gazes were filled with extreme confusion. What's that? The martial artists from further planes also noticed the abnormality in the sky. Just as they were extremely puzzled, the mountain flew to a sufficient height and stopped as if it had been frozen in time. Patriarch, is it done? It's done. Shwa. Shwa. On the ground of the stronghold, Jun Changshao waved his hands. Array flags flew out quickly and were inserted in fixed positions. After the array was set, he began to draw the lines. When everything was done, he released the 5 elements force in his body and quickly poured it into 5 fixed points. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth fused together. Suddenly, 5 different lights flashed and quickly spread to the various lines and connected, forming an endless cycle. Wung, wung, wung. The array light curtain rushed to the sky and then supported the floating mountain. Come down. Yes. Xiao Ziji removed the power and then landed on the ground. He looked up at the mountain that had been stable all along, and the corner of his mouth twitched. The Patriarch's method was really unconventional. The mountain modified by the modification device was supported by the 5 elements great array. As long as it wasn't seriously damaged, it would definitely be stable in the sky. Shwa. Shwa. Once again, Jun Changshao began to set up isolation arrays in the surroundings. Then, he concealed all the array barriers formed by the 5 elements grand array. At this point, a mountain that looked like it was suspended in the sky appeared from the outside. The system broke down. Host is so boring. In its opinion, it was better to refresh the store and buy items. Jun Changshao stood on the floating mountain and said, This is called ostentatious. It was really ostentatious. When the martial artists of various planes found that the floating mountain didn't rise or fall for several days in a row, they began to talk about it. Someone boldly flew over and stopped 100 miles away. When he found that the Falling Star Continent's martial artists were busy building on the floating mountain, his eyes widened. Could this be a floating mountain? For a time, the news about the floating mountain in the sky of the Falling Star Continent spread wildly on the battlefield. Some high-level planes didn't believe it at first. When they sent people to investigate and confirmed that there was indeed a floating mountain, they were deeply shocked. Awesome. How did they do it? Maybe there's an array supporting it below. Although an array can support a mountain, it is still heavy. If they don't find a large number of array masters to reinforce it, it won't last long. The martial artists of various planes were discussing the principle of the floating mountain. Some guessed that it was because of the array. They all agreed that the Falling Star Continent was just wasting manpower and resources to attract attention. It was true that they wanted to attract attention. As for the manpower and resources, except for the trouble at the beginning, when the power of the 5 elements in the 5 elements great array complemented each other, they didn't have to worry about oil leakage at all. They didn't need to maintain it on a daily basis. The area is still too small. Jun Changshao sat on a huge rock at the top of the mountain and said, "Why don't we hold up a few more mountains?" In his idea, a floating mountain was just the beginning. If the conditions allowed, he would build a floating mountain range, even if it was the kind that could shock people from afar. So, the area of the stronghold also needed to be expanded as soon as possible. How to expand it? Only the female system said to look for opportunities that hadn't been unsealed in the plain battlefield. Chapter 931. There were many opportunities in the dimensional battlefield. Only those that reached the time limit and were unsealed would be announced. As for those that were sealed, it would depend on who could find them. Many dimensions that met the requirements would continue to send mainland forces to guard them, because they wanted to look for opportunities. For example, Mo Shangxing had mobilized a lot of forces from the city. He would send martial artists to wander around the battlefield every day. If they were lucky, they might find something by accident and obtain the good stuff left behind by the upper realm powerhouses. Jun Changshao did not care about opportunities. After all, could they be stronger than the items in the store? However, he had to be careful when he expanded the area of the stronghold after he found it. A few years later, martial artists from the Falling Star Continent would come in. If he expanded the stronghold in advance and charged for it, he would definitely make a lot of money. Moreover, after seeing the stronghold of the boundless continent, Go Sheng was stimulated. He had to build his own territory to be more magnificent and luxurious than theirs. You guys build mountains? I'll do it too. It'll be dangerous. You build walls? I'll do it too. I'll use mountains as fences. Jun Changshao's idea was simple. Since he came to the dimensional battlefield, he could not slack off. He had to be the most pretentious, and the stronghold had to be the most awesome. The system said, "There are treasure hunting devices in the store that can help the host achieve his goals." High-level store? Middle-level store? Swoosh. Jun Changshao opened the system store without hesitation and said, "For the stronghold, let's go all out." It would take too long to increase the area by killing people. The best way was to look for opportunities in the battlefield. Therefore, he was willing to spend contribution points to expand the stronghold. Ding! 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 The system refreshed again and again, and the items changed again and again. The system said, "Host, you've become too wild now." The dimensional battlefield was like a huge world. Not only were there plains, but there were also many towering mountains and dark forests. This was not. To the west, there was a primeval forest that stretched for thousands of miles. There were no birds or beasts here, but there were many hidden traps. If martial artists were to enter, they would lose their lives if they were not careful. Logically speaking, no one should enter such a dangerous place. However, today there were dozens of martial artists in black robes walking carefully. In the middle of the crowd, a middle-aged man with a goatee and dressed in Taoist robes was holding a compass with his eyes closed. Buzz! Suddenly the compass started to spin. The strange words engraved on it began to glow faintly. After a while, the light dimmed, and the needle pointed in a certain direction. The middle-aged man opened his eyes and said, "Elder son, according to my deduction, there must be an unsealed opportunity hidden here. Are you sure? The white-haired old man at the front said. Elder Sunday, the Taoist priest, said seriously, I'm a professional when it comes to deduction. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been invited by the patriarch of your sect. Elder Sun realized that his tone of questioning was a little impudent, so he cupped his hands and apologized. Hiro Michinaga's deduction technique is famous throughout the universe. This son spoke incorrectly just now. Hiro Michinaga raised his eyebrows and looked towards the southwest. The opportunity is in this area, but there are many traps. Leave it to us. Elder Sun led the group forward cautiously. Because they had entered this place before, they quickly dispelled many of the traps. Boom! At this moment, a deafening roar came from the depths of the forest. A few hundred feet in front of them, flames shot into the sky as if there was a huge explosion. Someone triggered the explosion array? Elder Sun and the others' expressions changed slightly. They had not only encountered this kind of explosion when they first came here, but they had also personally experienced it. The result was disastrous, so it left a deep impression on them. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of light flew out from the explosion and landed lightly on the ground not far away. A young man in red and white battle robes and a mask appeared. Elder Sun and the others were stunned. This guy had obviously triggered the explosion array, but he had flown out unscathed. It was a little unbelievable. Damn it! The masked young man cursed and said, There are so many traps. After saying this, he didn't even look at the nearby cultivators and flew away. Boom! Boom! In just a few hundred feet, he triggered another 2 explosion arrays. But he still flew out safely. Oh my god! He rushed out so recklessly. Is this guy a heaven-level cultivator? The appearance of the masked man in battle robes was nothing more than a small interlude. It did not disrupt Elder Sun and the others' search for the existence in the southwest direction. No, not long after they left, Hiro Michinaga's expression changed drastically. He said, The aura of the opportunity one locked onto is gone. Gone. Elder Sun was stunned. What do you mean? Hiro Michinaga said in a low voice. It should be taken away by someone. Huh. Elder Sun and the others widened their eyes. When they continued forward and safely passed through the hidden traps, they arrived at the location of the compass deduction. There was only a huge pit left. It's gone. Hiro Michinaga broke down. It was really taken away by someone. Elder Sun said angrily. There was still an aura just now. How could it be taken away in the blink of an eye? It's him. Hiro Michinaga suddenly thought of something and said with certainty. It's that masked man in battle robes. Elder Sun and the others also unanimously believed that the opportunity was taken away by that guy. After all, there were no other martial artists in this area. Who is it that stole the opportunity found by our jingling continent? Elder Sun, judging from that guy's clothes, he seems to be the martial artist from the Falling Star continent, who killed so many people that he went crazy. Yes, that's him. I remember now. Whoosh! In the floating stronghold of the Falling Star continent, Jun Changshao quickly entered and took off his mask. He took out an item that looked like a tortoise shell and said, Is this a defensive artifact? Dear participant, this is the 6-word tortoise seal left by a mighty figure from the upper realm. According to the quality of the battlefield, it belongs to the earth level. The female system's sweet voice sounded. There are heaven-level treasures above it? Yes. Then it's a bit ordinary. The system broke down. The earth-level treasures in the battlefield are comparable to the saint-level treasures of the Falling Star continent. The host actually thinks it's ordinary. Fuck, Jun Changshao roared. I spent 20,000 contribution points to get a treasure explorer, and I only got a saint-level treasure in exchange. It's a huge loss. There's more than one opportunity in the battlefield. The host can continue to search with the treasure explorer. The system roared. That's true. Jun Changshao calmed down. The treasure explorer was not a one-time consumable item. It could be used again. If he could find 700 to 800 of such treasures, he would definitely make a profit. 700 to 800 of them? Why didn't he want to find 70,000 to 80,000 and have one for each of his disciples? Patriarch. Li Qingyang hurried over and said excitedly. The stronghold's area has expanded by a lot. After Jun Changshao obtained the 6-word tortoise seal and successfully returned to the stronghold, his territory had expanded by another 10,000 square meters. Not a loss. The system roared. Jun Changshao said, not a loss. Spending 20,000 contribution points in exchange for a high-grade Saint-grade defensive artifact, and the expansion of his stronghold was definitely worth it. Continue. Jun Changshao waved his hand and took out the Treasure Explorer from his spatial ring. This item was similar to Hiro Michinaga's compass. However, in terms of form and precision, it was more professional than Hiro Michinaga's item. Buzz. Spiritual thoughts entered, and the item was activated. Swish, swish, swish. The device inside, which looked like a minute hand, spun wildly until it stopped. 3 or 4 light spots appeared in a certain direction. Damn! Jun Changshao said in surprise. There are actually 3 opportunities hidden in that area. Chapter 932. The martial artists on the battlefield had been very irritated recently because they had used various means to determine some possible opportunities. However, when they tried their best to break it open, they found that there was nothing inside. This is not right. On a certain hill, seeing that there was nothing in the broken space, an old man in green clothes pulled his hair and shouted, "There is an opportunity hidden here. Why is it gone?" This kind of situation that made people collapse happened one after another in other places. The martial artists who had come here with confidence all left in disappointment. Second senior brother, Xiao Ziji, who was standing at the edge of the mountain, looked at the stronghold that had expanded several times and said in disbelief, "How did the patriarch do it?" 3 days ago, when Jun Changshao returned to the stronghold, the area would expand by 10,000 square meters. Now it had happened 4 or 5 times. At this speed, it would not be a problem to expand into a city, let alone a town. Li Qingyang, who was next to him, closed his eyes. His soul seemed to have flown out of his body. He looked down at the 70 to 80,000 square meters stronghold from the perspective of the Jade Emperor. Swoosh. His sea of consciousness evolved a 3D terrain model. First, there must be well-developed roads. Whoosh. Whoosh. Horizontal and vertical bluestone roads were laid out on the model, in the shape of the Chinese character Tian. The drainage system also needs to be equipped. Whoosh, whoosh. The terrain model changed again. The main hall, buildings and sentry towers also need to be equipped. As Li Qingyang was thinking, buildings appeared in his sea of consciousness one after another, and then sat on the terrain model out of thin air. In a short time, a small town with complete facilities was being built as more and more buildings were being built. Whoosh! Li Qingyang opened his eyes, took out a piece of paper, and drew the pattern that he had conceived in his sea of consciousness. He did not neglect any detail. This kind of construction talent was really super strong. Whoosh! In the swamp with a strong stench, Jun Changshao flew over while dragging a stream of light. The light on the treasure detector in his hand became brighter, which meant that there was an opportunity. Suddenly, he found that in the sky far away, there were dozens of martial artists in uniform. Below them, there were complicated lines of formations. Was it discovered in advance by others? Forget it. I'll look for it somewhere else. There were many light spots on the treasure finder, which meant that there was more than one place nearby. In the dimensional battlefield, it was very normal to snatch the fortuitous encounters that others discovered in advance. There was no need to feel guilty about it. However, there were so many people on the other side, and there was even an Earth-ranked author among them. Thus, Jun Changshao did not want to waste time. At this moment, the cultivator who was cracking the seal on the fortuitous opportunity also discovered him. An old man with a cold gaze said, "Why is there someone here? You guys continue to decipher. This old man will go and get rid of this brat to prevent any news from leaking out." Shwa! After saying that, he flew over and stopped Jun Changshao, who was about to leave. His eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. These people came from the second-tier Rudra continent. They had long since discovered the fortune hidden in the swamp. After making their preparations, They came here today to solve it. Naturally, they didn't want to be discovered by outsiders. Jun Gosheng said indifferently, silencing them. Not bad. Hoo, the Earth-ranked powerhouse didn't say another word. He erupted with vigorous attributes, forming dense palm prints that pressed forward. Judging from the intensity of the attacks, it was obvious that he wanted to quickly finish off his opponent. Boom! Boom! Scorching flames rose, instantly breaking all the palm prints that pressed down. The surrounding air instantly became hot and dry. The Earth-ranked powerhouse's expression changed. The killing move that he had condensed was actually broken so easily. Ho! The blazing flames gradually dissipated, revealing Jun Changshao, who was wearing a scarlet armor, with a lotus pattern engraved on it. He held a strange shield in his left hand, and a pitch-black spear in his right hand. He stood proudly in the air, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Scarlet lotus armor, desolate spirit shield, black dragon fatal spear. These 3 pieces of equipment were recently found by fortuitous opportunities. Any one of them would be enough to fill the author with several chapters of awesome equipment. Finding them in just a few days showed how awesome the treasure finder was. Seeing this, the Earth-ranked powerhouse's eyes almost popped out. This guy who was suddenly fully armed was wearing Earth-ranked equipment from head to toe. At that moment, he subconsciously used his sleeve to cover the Xian-ranked treasure on his wrist. After all, compared to this guy, it was simply too embarrassing. Sorry. The Earth-ranked powerhouse cupped his hands and said, "This old man mistook you for an enemy." Instant cowardice. Facing this kind of martial artist, a martial artist who had cultivated for thousands of years, was definitely not to be trifled with. No. Jun Changshao, who was fully equipped, said expressionlessly, "You didn't recognize the wrong person. We are now enemies, so, Xiao." Exploding down, flames were released all over the sky. "You should just die." Boom. Boom. The 2 Aluo continent's martial artists who were deciphering the fortuitous opportunities in the swamp heard a loud noise coming from afar, as well as bursts of scorching heat. They all turned their heads to look. Flames were erupting from there, like a burning furnace. Shua! Suddenly, a man wearing scarlet armor walked out from the flames in the sky, holding a pitch-black spear in his hand, and a person was hanging on the spearhead. Old he! Everyone exclaimed. That Earth-ranked powerhouse could no longer hear them, because his heart had been pierced by the black dragon fatal spear. His soul had already flown to the 9th heaven. Shua! Jun Changshao threw out the corpse hanging on the spear, and flames appeared all over his body. His voice was cold as he said, "This lord wants the fortuitous opportunities here." At that moment, he was like an emotionless killing god who walked out of the volcanic hell. Huff huff. Under the eruption of scorching flames, the temperature around the swamp rose sharply. The 2 Aluo continent's martial artists were covered in sweat, and the shock in their eyes became more and more intense. Even the Earth-ranked old he was killed. They didn't think they had the ability to contend with the other party, so they made the right choice in the shortest time, giving up on the fortuitous opportunities, and fled into the distance together. If it was at the beginning, Jun Changshao might have killed them to expand the stronghold. Now that finding a fortuitous opportunity would give him tens of thousands of square meters. So he was too lazy to kill a group of yellow-ranked powerhouses at the cost of a red name. Xiao. Flying over, he landed in front of the formation. With this level of formation, it's simply a waste of time to break the seal. Jun Changshao waved his hand, and his spiritual energy spread around, instantly crushing all kinds of formations and lines. Then, he released his spiritual thoughts and communicated with the restriction in the dark. The fortuitous opportunities left in the battlefield by the upper realm were sealed with fixed concealment formations. If they weren't discovered and broken within a certain time, they would be automatically unsealed, and then the various realms would fight over them. Jun Changshao slightly connected with the concealment formation and said in surprise, "This formation seems to be more complicated than the ones that were broken before. Could it be that it hides an extraordinary fortuitous opportunity?" 10 minutes later, he found a flaw in the formless formation and slightly modified the internal structure. Space distorted. and the formation suddenly collapsed, gradually revealing an arched door. Jun Changshao walked in, as if it was nothing out of the ordinary. He walked along the tunnel for about 100 steps, and came to a spacious stone room. 8 large pillars were arranged in different positions, and lifelike birds and beasts were carved on them. A stone platform protruded from the center area. Thud! Jun Changshao walked over. On the stone surface that was as smooth as a mirror, there was a sailboat about the size of a palm, and the words archaic warship were carved near it. What's this? Jun Changshao asked in surprise. The system said, obviously, it's a treasure that can be used to sail. It doesn't seem to be of much use. If the host doesn't plan to go to the 3 large regions overseas, it definitely won't be of much use. Aren't you telling the reader a spoiler by saying that? As Jun Changshao spoke, he released his will into the archaic warship, instantly establishing a connection with it, and forcibly obtaining a memory inheritance. Then he said in surprise, this ship is used to fly. Chapter 933. The treasures sealed in the planar battlefield belonged to the category of equipment and treasures. They would transmit a memory that taught the holder how to use them and what effects they had. Jun Changshao also received the memory when he controlled the ancient warship. From it, he learned that it wasn't used to cross the sea but to fly. It wasn't a spaceship. How could it fly? The world of martial arts is full of wonders, the system said. The host should treat it with a normal heart. That's true. Jun Changshao wandered around a few more times. After confirming that there were no more treasures, he took away the stone platform that seemed to be made of some kind of special mineral. If it weren't for the fact that he still needed to support the 8 pillars, he might have taken it with him. After taking away the treasures in the stone room, Jun Changshao didn't linger and left. His soul form was playing with the pocket-sized ancient warship in his spatial ring. From its appearance, it looked like an ancient ship. It was made of wood and had 2 masts, 1 main and 1 auxiliary. There were sails of different sizes and ropes for retracting. There was also a very inconspicuous diagram in the cabin that looked like a formation. Jun Changshao asked in surprise, could it be that it's driven by a spirit array? If that was the case, it made sense. Without the support of formations in the world of martial arts, he found it hard to believe that a normal ship could fly in the sky. For example, the various firearms that could be bought from the shop wouldn't be a threat in the Falling Star continent, where any martial master could catch bullets with their bare hands. If they weren't modified and made of crystal cores, they wouldn't be a threat. Whoosh! Whoosh! In the sky above the swamp, streaks of light came from afar. There were about 20 of them, 15 of which were Xian and 5 of which were Earth. These people were from the Tualuo continent. After learning that Elder He had been killed, and that the treasures might have been stolen, they hurried over. As a second-tier plane, their overall strength wasn't as strong as the 9 Heavens continent, but they were still a force to be reckoned with in the planar battlefield. Soon, they stopped at the burning area, and saw Elder He's corpse lying in the swamp. Their eyes were filled with anger. You killed someone from the Tualuo continent. Even if you're the king of heaven, you must die today. The leading old man said coldly. Cui Lao. Someone next to him said solemnly. I'm afraid only the first-tier planes would dare to kill our people in the planar battlefield. Everyone's expressions changed slightly. If it was really killed by a first-tier plane, then it would be a little tricky. The corner of Cui Lao's mouth twitched slightly as he said, even if you're in the first echelon, you still have to seek an explanation. Although his voice was as angry as ever, it was clear from his tone that he was a little scared. For a second-tier plane like the Tualuo continent, bullying a third-tier plane or lower was no problem at all. However, they were powerless against a first-tier plane. TSK. A middle-aged man sneered. The first echelon is nothing special. For example, the 9 Heavens continent was defeated by a newly ascended plane some time ago. Elder Song, are you talking about the Falling Star continent? Not bad. This old man has also heard of this plane. Don't judge it by its low level. There are quite a few experts there. The 9 Heavens continents Ci Mei, Furious Eyes, and 9 Stars Elder have all been captured. The one overseeing the Falling Star continent is a sect called the strongest sect of all ages. The patriarch is Jun Changxiao, and he's only in his early 20s. It's strange. It's clearly not the time for the planes to enter the battlefield. How did this plane come in? Also, I heard that there aren't many of them, only about 10 to 20. The Nine Heavens continent is a first-tier plane after all. Yet it was defeated by a newly ascended plane. In this old man's opinion, our Tualuo continent can definitely replace it. A chef who didn't want to be a general wasn't a good tailor. As a second-tier plane, they naturally wanted to be in the first echelon. Elderly, Cui Lao said. You were there when the opportunity appeared. Did you see the Falling Star Continent's martial artists? I did. Elderly, who had been silent all this while, had a hint of fear in his eyes. Among the 20 people, he was the only one who had personally experienced the Falling Star Continent's martial artists' frenzied massacre. Although many days had passed, he still shuddered every time he thought about it. Fortunately, he saw that the situation wasn't good and retreated early. Otherwise, he would have been dead. This kind of expert, who was comparable to Wu Sheng in the Falling Star Continent, was traumatized by Jun Changxiao's unstoppable massacre. Cui Lao said, he killed tens of thousands of people in a short time, and was punished by the upper realm's lightning punishment. This Falling Star Continent isn't simple. We can't let our guard down. Elder Song, who was still a little smug, shut his mouth. He could brag as much as he wanted. However, the Falling Star Continent's Jun Changxiao, who held a huge sword and went on a frenzied massacre, was definitely capable. He had to be taken seriously. Fortunately, we didn't provoke this plane. The Nine Heavens continent suffered a great loss, but they didn't do anything. Perhaps, they also realized that the Falling Star continent isn't simple. I knew it. The first-tier plane can't be so cowardly. It turns out that they already knew something was wrong. Swish! Just as everyone was discussing, a stream of light flew out at extreme speed. Jun Changxiao stopped in midair and saw a group of people outside. He smiled and said, Are you here for revenge? The Tualuo continent's martial artists also noticed him. Cui Lao, Elder Song said angrily. Judging from his attire and age, he must be the one who killed Elder He. Is he the Elder He you're talking about? Jun Changxiao pointed at the corpse below and said, If so, then yes, I killed him. The Tualuo continent's martial artists were furious. This kind of killing and admitting it with a face full of pride, he didn't take them seriously at all. The Earth powerhouse called Elderly frowned and said to himself, His voice is a little familiar. Could it be? I'm in a hurry. Jun Changxiao took out a mask and put it on his face. He said, If you want to fight, then hurry up and kill me. Last time, he killed many people for the opportunity, but it was all because of the blade that was difficult to withdraw. Today, since there were so many Earth and Mystic powerhouses, he naturally wanted to see if he could compete with them with the various equipment he found on the battlefield. It's him. It's him. Elderly, who was still thinking, saw the mask that had been imprinted in his heart, and his expression changed greatly. His whole body suddenly trembled violently. Cui Lao and the others were confused. Who? Say it. Elderly was so scared that he almost couldn't float in the air, and the fear in his eyes was abnormally strong. He stammered, Star. Falling Star Continents. Jun Changxiao. Ah. The Tualuo continent's martial artists all widened their eyes. The guy they were talking about just now had actually appeared in front of them. And he was the murderer of Elder He. Jun Changxiao's gaze locked on Elderly. He said with a smile, I remember now. You're the martial artist who retreated in the opposite direction when the group of people were attacking me. Elderly's expression was very ugly. At that time, he had followed more than 10 Earth powerhouses to attack, but he smelled danger in advance, so he hurriedly retreated. That was how he survived. I accidentally passed by this place, and that guy attacked first with killing intent, so I killed him instead. You guys are with him. It's reasonable for you to seek revenge. Jun Changxiao summoned all his equipment and held the Black Dragon suicidal spear in his hand. He said, Then I'll have a good fight with you guys today. The Tualuo continent's powerhouses were all dumbfounded. This guy's equipment was obviously Earth grade. June Patriarch. Chui Lao hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "We just happened to pass by, and have no intention of fighting. Goodbye." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, the 22 Luo continent's powerhouses who came menacingly all slipped away at lightning speed. Jun Changshao shook his head. Are they that afraid of me? Chapter 934. The 20 experts from the Tua Luo continent had been scared away. Part of it was because Jun Changshao had gone on a killing spree, and part of it was because he was wearing Earth-ranked equipment. In a battlefield where having a single piece of equipment was enough to make one feel like they were flying to the heavens, a single person, wearing a 6-piece divine equipment set, would definitely be terrifying. Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed. I really want to fight with them. He had found so many pieces of equipment on the battlefield to show off, but he didn't even get a chance to fight. Seeing him so smug, the host felt uncomfortable. Host, take off your equipment. Do you believe that they will drown you with their saliva? I believe, Jun Changshao said. With his current strength, if he didn't have any equipment, he would be thankful if he could fight an Earth-ranked expert to a standstill. It's rare for the host to have such self-awareness, the system said. But, Jun Changshao said seriously, if I don't use my equipment and fight them barehanded, my brain must have been kicked by a donkey. No one else could be so righteous when using cheats. Let's try this ancient warship. Jun Changshao didn't chase after the fleeing Tua Luo continent experts. Instead, he landed outside the swamp and summoned the ancient warship, sending his thoughts into it. Pung! There was a loud explosion and white mist rose. When the cold wind blew, a wooden boat appeared. The boat was about 200 zhang long, and it gave off a desolate aura, as if it had been here for a long time. Domineering. Jun Changshao looked up, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Shua! With a leap, he landed on the deck, and a creaking sound could be heard. Jun Changshao had already inspected the outer structure of the boat, so he didn't look at it carefully. He walked directly into the cabin, and saw the strange pentagonal formation. In its pocket-sized form, the pattern wasn't very clear. Now that it was enlarged, he saw that there were 5 diagonal areas with 2 grooves, which seemed to be used to embed some kind of energy. Understood, Jun Changshao said. This is a driving formation. It needs to be loaded with energy to operate. The reason why he was able to confirm it so quickly was because the guns, cannons, and all kinds of equipment he bought in the shop had similar notches that were charged with the energy of crystal cores. The crystal cores should be able to be used as fuel. Jun Changshao took out 10 crystal nuclei and embedded them in the notch. Sure enough, after the crystal cores were all in place, the strange and ancient spell formation suddenly flickered with light. Swish! A gentle stream of light spread out. Jun Changshao's will came into contact with the ancient warship as his body trembled slightly. He instantly felt as though he had gained complete control over this ancient warship. Rise. Issue orders. Ho-ho-ho, the array formation in the cabin glowed brightly, and the ancient warship slowly rose into the air, hovering 1,000 feet above the ground. A ship used for navigation was suspended in the air. It was a very strange scene. Unbelievable. Jun Changshao exclaimed as he carefully inspected the interior of the ancient warship. In the end, he came to the conclusion that there was no problem in accommodating 100 people. Not only was there a cabin for people to rest in, there was also a kitchen, a hall, a training room, and other facilities. It was obvious that the person who built the warship knew how to enjoy life. After the tour, Jun Changshao came to the bow of the warship and stood with his hands behind his back. From now on, the battlefield will be under my control. Under the control of his will, the floating ancient warship flew into the distance with a swish. Ho-ho-ho! Jun Changshao, who was standing at the bow of the warship and acting coquettishly, was blown by the wind. Not bad. The speed of the ancient warship was not as fast as the combination of his mechanical wings and flying ability. However, it was still much faster than an ordinary Earth-class expert. In other words, this warship was not one of those treasures that were so fast that it defied the heavens. However, it was still a vehicle that could accommodate many people. Its value was reflected. What was its value? It could bring disciples along to act cool and fly together. Ho-ho-ho. Ho-ho-ho. A few hundred miles away, the 20 martial artists from the Tua-Luo continent slowed down. Their faces were red as they breathed heavily. We escaped. Elderly was still in a state of shock. At that time, with the distance between them and Jun Changshao, if they had been in a frenzied state like before, they would have long since fallen under Jun Changshao's control. They could only watch helplessly as they were killed. Cui Lao said with lingering fear. I didn't expect to meet the killing god of the falling star continent in the swamps. Elder Song, who was very arrogant just a moment ago, became mute. Initially, he looked down on the Nine Heavens continent. However, when he saw Jun Changshao's Earth-class equipment, he finally understood why the first echelon had suffered such a huge loss. This kid is extraordinary, Cui Lao, who had gradually calmed down, said seriously. When we return to the stronghold, we must tell the patriarch not to provoke him. After pausing for a while, he added, not to provoke the falling star continent. That's right. Everyone agreed. Suddenly the sky darkened. It felt as though there were dark clouds passing by. The martial artists from the Tua-Luo continent looked up instinctively and were dumbfounded. This was because they saw something with an ancient aura flying slowly in their field of vision. This is a ship? Cui Lao and the rest opened their mouths in shock. At this moment, the 20 martial artists from the Tua-Luo continent clearly saw a young man with black hair, standing on the bow of the ship. They exclaimed, it's him. Jun Changshao looked at the shocked crowd below and smiled. Hi, we meet again. The corners of Cui Lao and the rest's mouths twitched. This guy's supreme-class equipment was already scary enough. Now that he was on a ship that could fly, the shock was even more intense. Moreover, there was something more important. Everyone was a Xian and Earth-class expert, and they had released their spiritual senses. Why did they only realize it when the shadow of the ship descended? Ho-ho! The ancient warship was still emitting a desolate aura. Then, it slowly flew away under the watchful eyes of the martial artists from the Tua-Luo continent. Cui Lao. Elder Song was dumbfounded. The ship can actually fly. Cui Lao said. This is the first time I've seen it. If I'm not wrong, this item must be from the upper world. It was definitely not a wild imagination. It was indeed from the upper world. Moreover, if Elder He hadn't wanted to silence them, this treasure should have been from the Tua-Luo continent. The ancient warship was still flying above the battlefield. However, from the slow speed, it was obviously very different from when it took off. Jun Changshao came to the control room puzzled. Of the 10 crystal cores placed in the pentagonal formation, 5 had dimmed, and the other 5 were in a state of exhaustion. It can't be. Jun Changshao was stunned. The 10 high-grade crystal cores were used up so quickly, the system said. A warship that can fly is of extraordinary quality. It's normal for it to consume a lot of fuel. Jun Changshao understood this point. However, the 10 crystal cores he embedded in the formation were comparable to the Martial King level. It was too expensive to use them up after flying for less than 500 miles. If he really wanted to go to the 3 provinces overseas in the future, the journey would be extremely long. It would definitely be a huge expense to take the disciples on a self-driving trip. Forget it. Jun Changshao shook his head. Let's take the high-speed rail. The system said. The host can use spirit stones as fuel. Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. Do you think I have so many spirit stones that I can use them as fuel? Try it. The system said. Perhaps different levels of energy will allow the warship to fly faster and longer. That makes sense. Jun Changshao took out 10 artificial spirit stones. No, not exciting enough. He put away the artificial spirit stones and took out the natural spirit stones. However, he still felt that it was not exciting enough, so he took out 10 6-pointed star stones and placed them in the groove. Ta! Standing on the bow again, Jun Changshao put his hands behind his back and said, Let's fly. Whoosh! The ancient warship received its master's order and instantly flashed. Then it charged forward at an extremely fast speed. Coincidentally, Cui Lao and the rest flew over. When they saw the huge ship suddenly vanish into thin air, All of them were dumbfounded. Half a day later, Elder Song said in horror, "It's so fast that we can't even see the tail of the ship." Chapter 935. How fast would the ancient warship be after it was boosted by 10 hexagonal stones? Jun Changshao, who had originally been standing at the bow of the ship, was now tightly hugging the mast like a flag swaying in the wind. "Slow down. Slow down." Whoosh! Under the control of its master, the ancient warship gradually slowed down and entered a slow flight mode. Heavens! Using hexagonal stones as fuel was like changing the engine. The system said, "My guess is correct." Jun Changshao ignored it and went to the cabin. The 10 hexagonal stones were shining brightly. He smiled and said, "We've flown at least 500 miles, and it's still full of energy. Crystal cores can't compare to its speed and endurance." It was decided. If he went to the 3 provinces overseas, he would travel by ship. The reason why Jun Patriarch was so confident was because he had extorted a lot of hexagonal stones from the 9 heavens continent. Alright, what good stuff did that guy have in his ring? Jun Changshao casually took out Elder He's spatial ring and started reading through it. An Earth-ranked expert from the Tualuo continent had quite a lot of things in his ring, especially a few martial arts manuals. "I can use them to make up the numbers." Jun Changshao kept the manuals in his spatial ring and continued reading. He found 10 glowing ores and guessed, "These should be martial arts resources like spirit stones and star stones." That was right. They had the same function, but different names. The author was too lazy to name them. So from today onwards, all resources with the same function as spirit stones would be replaced by spirit stones. The energy contained in spirit stones from the Tualuo continent was much stronger than those from the falling star continent, but it was still inferior to hexagonal stones. "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have killed that guy and let his plane use this martial arts resource as a ransom," Jun Changshao said. "Let's go." Whoosh! The ancient warship traveled at full speed, shuttling through the endless battlefield. "Did something fly over there just now? I felt it too. Strange, I didn't catch it with my spiritual sense. Could it be that I've been cultivating too much recently and am hallucinating?" All the martial artists were surprised. They didn't know that a large ship had just flown by. At the Starfall Continent stronghold, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were busy with construction. Suddenly the sky darkened. Everyone raised their heads and saw a large ship hovering above them at some point in time. "Ship." Long Xiang's eyes widened. "The Patriarch is up there." Li Fei's eyes were sharp, and he discovered Jun Changshao standing at the bow of the ship. He Wudi and Yi Xingchen's expressions froze when they saw the huge warship floating in the air. Then they started imagining things. The ancient warship remained suspended in the air above the stronghold. This was the standby mode. Although it would consume energy, in front of the powerful hexagram, it was almost negligible. At this moment, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others had already flown up. They stood on the deck and looked around, like country bumpkins who had never seen the world. "Patriarch," Li Fei said in disbelief, "is this ship a supreme treasure?" "Not only is it a supreme treasure, but it's also a flying supreme treasure," Jun Changshao said. "Amazing." Li Fei and the others' eyes were filled with worship. They went out and brought back a flying warship. It was completely beyond their imagination. "I have sinned." Jun Changshao took out the desolate spirit shield and threw it over, saying, "Take this shield and use it." Xiao Ziji took the shield. Just by touching it, he could tell that it was definitely much stronger than the black iron shield. He said excitedly, "Thank you, Patriarch, for your reward." Jun Changshao took out the black dragon suicide spear and threw it to Long Xiang after some consideration, saying, "This is yours." "Thank you, Patriarch, for your reward." Long Xiang took the black dragon suicide spear and fondled it. "I also have a Scarlet Lotus battle armor. Who wants it?" Jun Changshao said. "Me," Yi Xingchen hurriedly said. Brother Anyo had changed. He wasn't like this in the past. Jun Changshao threw the Scarlet Lotus battle armor over, saying, "I hope you can spread the might of the falling star continent in the planar battlefield." Because he had to manage and develop the sect, He couldn't stay in the planar battlefield forever. He gave the equipment to the disciples in the hope that they would inherit his will and turn the world upside down. Yes, the disciples said in unison. After bringing the ancient warship to the stronghold, it met the requirements of obtaining fortuitous opportunities and expanded by 10,000 square meters. However, this wasn't enough to satisfy Jun Changshao. In the next few days, he went out one after another to search for fortuitous opportunities on the battlefield. As long as he set his eyes on something, he would definitely sweep it clean. There were many types of fortuitous opportunities on the battlefield. There were martial arts, equipment, treasures, and many natural treasures. After Jun Changshao returned, as long as it was suitable for the disciples, he would give it to them. In a short 10 days, the Falling Star Continent's stronghold expanded a lot. After reaching a certain size, Jun Changshao used the terrain remodeling tool to build a mountain, and then used the 5 elements formation to prop it up. One day, when Jun Changshao returned and gave a pair of speed-increasing boots to Li Fei, a deep voice suddenly sounded in the sky. The Falling Star Continent's stronghold has the basic size of a town. The battlefield merit store is officially activated. Whoosh! As soon as the voice finished, the empty space near the main hall flashed with light. A building surrounded by clouds and mist appeared out of thin air. There was a plaque with the words Battlefield Merit Store engraved on it. It's finally here. Jun Changshao rubbed his hands and walked into the majestic merit store. There were no decorations inside. There were wooden signs on the east wall with many small words written on them. Spirit Origin Sword, 100 merit points required. Origin Condensing Pill, 100 merit points required. Cloud Sail Sword Art, 100 merit points required. At the bottom of the wooden sign, there was a line of words. The content was when the merit points meet the requirements. You only need to take off the wooden sign to obtain the corresponding item. Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, "It's a bit similar to the system store." It was only similar, but its functions were definitely not comparable to the system store. After all, there was no introduction. Who knew if the Spirit Origin Sword and Origin Condensing Pill were strong or not? I have a lot of merit points. I can buy it and try it. Jun Changshao walked over and took off the wooden sign with the Spirit Origin Sword and Origin Condensing Pill. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, a bright sword and 10 pills appeared in his hand. Jun Changshao said in surprise, "It's a bit magical." Clang! He unsheathed the sword. The sword flashed. After examining it, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "It's far from the true Yang sword." Gulp! He ate a Origin Condensing Pill. The effect of the pill is about the same as the Qi Gathering Pill, but it only increases the absorption speed by 20 times. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "The battlefield merit store is too disappointing." If the martial artists who fought for merit points heard this, they would definitely vomit blood on the spot. It was not that Jun Changshao was showing off, but after exchanging several items in succession, he concluded that weapons, pills, and even martial arts manuals could not be compared to the system store. Martial artists could treat them as treasures, but in front of him and his disciples, they were not of any substantial help. No, they were helpful. At least he could exchange for secret manuals and use them to make up the numbers in the technique pavilion. Origin Condensing Pill and Qi Gathering Pill did not conflict, so taking them together to increase the absorption speed was not bad. As for equipment and treasures, they were not worth exchanging, because Jun Changshao had found a lot of opportunities recently. Several core disciples had already gathered 6 sets. Junior brothers. At the edge of the stronghold, Li Qingyang glanced at Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, and the other disciples and said with a solemn expression, "The patriarch has found so many pieces of equipment for us. Don't let him down. We must live up to the prestige of the Fallen Star Continent on the battlefield." Okay. Everyone's eyes flickered. Let's go. Li Qingyang was the first to fly out. Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, He Wudi, and the others followed one after another. On this day, the Sect of All Times' disciples flew out of the stronghold. The hard-working martial artists in the dimensional battlefield were probably trembling. Sitting in the main hall, Jun Changshao looked at his treasures flying away, and said with a smile, although the overall strength of the Fallen Star continent is not as good as other dimensions, we can crush them with equipment. Chapter 936. Boom! Boom! In a certain area of the dimensional battlefield, 2 yellow-class martial artists, who were as strong as rank 7 or rank 8 Wu Huang, were condensing all kinds of moves and bombarding the dusty area below. A moment later, the two stopped. Big brother, the shorter martial artist said. That arrogant guy probably didn't even have a hair left after being bombarded. The martial artist called Big Brother sneered. Isn't it good to be alive? Why did he have to come here to die? The two brothers were originally looking for opportunities in the dimensional battlefield. Suddenly, someone flew over, and then provoked them in all kinds of ways, resulting in the bombardment just now. Hey! Suddenly, a voice came from the dusty area. Don't be happy too early. Hearing this, the smiles on the two martial artists' faces froze. Whoosh, a gust of wind blew, and the dust dissipated. Xiao Ziji, who was wearing the true Yang set, stood proudly in place, a trace of disappointment in his eyes. He thought that these two martial artists would be very strong, but he just stood there and let them bombard him. They didn't even bring him any substantial threat, and he didn't even bother to use the Desolate Spirit Shield. Big brother, he's actually fine. How is that possible? Bang! Xiao Ziji stomped his foot, and the ground cracked as he rushed up like a cannonball. Whoosh whoosh, the desolate physique erupted, and an aura as heavy as a mountain instantly spread out. Boom! 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 Plop! Plop! After omitting a few hundred words of battle, the two martial artists from the Chi-Mei continent had their mouths crooked and their eyes sunken in a deep pit. Xiao Ziji floated in the air and said with disappointment, I still have to find a higher-level martial artist to fight. Junior brother Yi. He looked back into the distance. Let's go. Yi Xingchen, who was standing in the sky with his hands crossed, said lightly, it took dozens of moves to deal with this kind of trash. Xiao Ziji could actually deal with his opponent faster, but this time, he came out of the stronghold to gain experience, so he hoped to fight for a while longer. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two of them left the area and continued to search for their target. Before long, they encountered a team of 5. Xiao Ziji was about to continue provoking them when he heard Yi Xingchen say, Leave it to me. All right. Swish. Yi Xingchen flew over and stood in front of the 5 of them. He said calmly, a bunch of trash. If it was Xiao Ziji, he might have to use a lot of words to provoke the target. However, the proud and aloof Knight Emperor only used 4 words, and his arrogant appearance to instantly fill up the taunt value. You're courting death. Chop him up. Hoo hoo hoo. In an instant, the entire region erupted with energy, but it was just as brief as the blooming fireworks. This was because when Yi Xingchen appeared behind them and sheathed the true Yang sword, the 5 yellow-titled martial artists fell to the ground one after another. Sword scars of the same size and depth appeared on their necks. Junior brother Yi is so strong. Xiao Ziji gave a thumbs up. Yi Xingchen said, if you can't kill your enemy in one hit, then there's no point in cultivating martial arts. This sentence, coupled with his proud and aloof figure, made him look unprecedentedly pretentious. However, in just a few minutes, more than 30 martial artists chased after them. Pei Anius saw that the situation was bad and ran faster than anyone else. Xiao Ziji and Yi Xingchen were in the same group to train in the planar battlefield. Li Qingyang, Li Fei, and the others were also training in groups. Although they had just entered Wu Huang, they had top-tier equipment on them. They didn't fear any yellow-titled martial artists at all. 4 high-level continents, the planar battlefield was used to earn merit points, exchange them for martial arts resources, and find opportunities. Although it was possible to die at any time, it constantly attracted martial artists. For the core disciples of the sect of all times, the planar battlefield was a dungeon for leveling up. They didn't even need to farm for equipment because they already had 6 pieces. A few hours later, Li Qingyang and the others returned to the stronghold with excitement on their faces. They had all experienced real combat this time, and had benefited a lot from fighting. Li Fei said. Why aren't senior brother Xiao and junior brother Yi back yet? Li Qingyang frowned and said. Did they run into trouble? Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, Xiao Ziji and Yi Xingchen flew over from afar, and landed on the floating stronghold in a rather sorry state. Junior brother Xiao, what happened? Li Qingyang asked. Xiao Ziji panted for a moment and said, Junior brother Yi insisted on fighting with Xian-titled martial artists. In the end, he was chased by 10 Xian-titled martial artists for 2 hours. Yi Xingchen said indifferently. If it wasn't for their numbers, I would definitely be able to finish them off one by one. Li Qingyang said. Junior brother Yi, although the patriarch gave us a set of equipment, our strength is still limited. We must be careful when we go out to train. Yi Xingchen didn't say anything, and walked towards the teleportation gate. Let's go. Li Qingyang said. Let's go back too. Everyone returned to the sect, and began to digest the benefits of the real combat. In the next half a month, Li Qingyang and the others either built in the stronghold, or went out to train together. Because they had a set of top-grade equipment and ran fast, the martial artists of the various continents had a headache. Dragon Head Peak. Jun Changshao sat in the study and took out 2 experience talismans, saying, Half-step Wuxing doesn't have sub-realms. Is this thing still useful? Pa! He crushed one of them. Whoosh whoosh. The psionic energy in the 2 spirit cores changed slightly. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, The higher the realm, the less obvious the effect of the experience talisman. As he spoke, he crushed the other experience talisman. Although his psionic energy was strengthened, the increase in strength was not very significant. Patriarch. At this moment, Li Luoqiu hurried in and said, The Taishan Shengzong was besieging the demon gate at the Raging Waves Lake, when they were suddenly ambushed by a large number of masked men in black. They suffered heavy casualties. Jun Changxiao's expression suddenly became solemn and said, Is Xiaomu okay? Although he was separated from the higher-ups of the Taishan Shengzong, the news said that he is fine. Li Luoqiu said. That's good. Jun Changxiao breathed a sigh of relief and said, Are these masked men in black the same group that I investigated? Yes. Li Luoqiu said. Jun Changxiao sat down and supported his right cheek with his fist. He said, The Taishan Shengzong was exterminating the remnants of the Demon Gate. This organization's sneak attack should be related to the group of disciples that was separated from the Demon Emperor sect. Li Luoqiu was about to speak when the latest information came to her ears. She hurriedly said, Patriarch, there is news from the West Cloud State. A force that calls itself the Demon Emperor's Gate announced to the public that they will fight to the death with the righteous sects. Demon Emperor's Gate? Jun Changxiao was stunned. Li Luoqiu said again. They also announced that the sneak attack on the Taishan Shengzong was their doing. Fighting to the death with the righteous sects, and then attacking the first-class sections. Jun Changxiao said, This Demon Emperor's Gate is going to cause trouble. Sure enough. For the next few days, the Falling Star continent was bustling with activity. The Demon Emperor's Gate that appeared out of nowhere launched a fierce attack on the righteous sects, and exterminated several fifth-class sects one after another. Jun Changxiao learned from the information that the sects that were exterminated had a characteristic, which was that they had followed the major sects to exterminate the remnants of the Demon Gate. Patriarch. Li Luoqiu said, The fourth-class Azure Water sect was exterminated by the Demon Emperor's Gate. The upper echelons and tens of thousands of disciples were all killed. The righteous sects didn't make a move? Yes, 2 first-class sects joined forces with the second and third-class sects, and are rushing towards the West Cloud State. I'm afraid a fierce battle will break out soon. Jun Changxiao interlocked his fingers, and rested his chin on the back of his hand. He said, The Falling Star continent is about to enter the planar battlefield. The Demon Emperor's Gate is a little interesting for them to stir up trouble at this time. Patriarch. Li Luoqiu said again. The Demon Emperor's Gate announced to the public that the Gate Master has the innate demon physique, and obtained the Demon Emperor's inheritance. They also issued the Demon Emperor's order to recruit all the demon cultivators hidden in the falling star continent. Innate demon physique? Jun Changxiao said in surprise. Isn't it on Mengying? Could it be that this physique is not unique? Chapter 937. The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate had destroyed several sects in just a few days. The righteous sects would definitely not tolerate this. Thus, 2 first-rate sects took the lead and joined forces with more than a dozen second-rate and third-rate sects to launch an attack. For a moment, all the martial artists and forces focused their attention on the West Fate province. The Drizzle Hall's intelligence network also began to operate. Dozens of intelligence reports were sent to them every day. Li Luoqiu filtered through them and reported the important information to the patriarch. Tisk tisk. Jun Changxiao, who was fishing by the pond, heard the latest news and said in surprise, "This Demon Emperor's Gate actually has 4 wusheng. Their strength can't be underestimated." Li Luoqiu said, "The 2 first-rate sects suffered many casualties." Experts. Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, "Just a bunch of small fries." The corner of Li Luoqiu's mouth twitched. The 2 first-rate sects that attacked the Demon Emperor's Gate had sent 4 half-saints, 10 Wu Huang, and dozens of martial kings. This lineup could be said to be luxurious, but the patriarch actually described it as a bunch of small fries. If Hall Master Li went to the planar battlefield and saw Jun Changxiao's crazy slaughter with hard-to-retract blade, he would understand why he described it this way. Jun Patriarch was now someone who had experienced big scenes. Not to mention half-saints in Wu Huang. Even if dozens of Wu Sheng appeared in front of him, he would not be surprised. This Demon Emperor's Gate is the dark sect force that once ambushed me. If they don't have some strength, they definitely won't openly make an enemy of the righteous sects, Jun Changxiao muttered. According to the information he had determined that the masked man in black, who had repeatedly attacked him, was a remnant of the demon sect that had been separated from the Demon Emperor sect. The guy who had previously invited him in Maple Valley might be one of the leaders. West Fate Province. On a tall mountain, spiritual energy was rampant, and space was distorted to the extreme. This was the place where the martial artists of the Demon Emperor's Gate fought with the righteous sections. Although the battle had already ended, the chilling atmosphere was still strong. Even a first-rate sect is only SOSO. A burly man in black armor stood on the battlefield, gnawing on the bloody thigh of a dire beast. A slender man stood next to him. He flicked the hair on his forehead and said indifferently, "Vice Sect Master shouldn't have sent us to deal with this kind of trash." Ghost. A hunchbacked old man walked over and said in a deep voice, "You are getting bolder and bolder. You dare to question the Vice Sect Master's orders." The man named Ghost smiled and said, "I'm just saying it casually. Don't accuse me so casually. Let's go." A woman with a graceful figure withdrew her dagger and said indifferently, "Return to the sect." Although the 4 of them had different appearances, a chilling demonic aura gathered around them. Their cultivation was also at the Emperor stage. These were the 4 great protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate, who had appeared out of thin air. The burly man was called a boorish man. The slender man was called Ghost. The hunchbacked old man was called Een Dove, and the graceful woman was called Shadow. In the fierce battle just now, at least 500 to 600 martial artists of the righteous sects had died at the hands of these 4 people. They were definitely the main force. The sect forces in West Fate Province are almost cleaned up. When will we go to the other provinces to have fun? For example, Ghost smiled and said, "The nearby Yangzhou in the southwest." Shadow, who was walking in front, said indifferently, "This province is overseen by the Sect of All Times. The Vice Sect Master has ordered us not to provoke them for the time being." "I'm curious," Ghost said. "The Sect of All Times killed many of our people. Why doesn't the Vice Sect Master let us deal with them?" Een Dove suddenly opened his mouth and said, "You're doubting the Vice Sect Master again." No, don't talk nonsense," Ghost said. A boorish man looked toward the southwest and grinned. "I heard that the disciples of the Sect of All Times are very strong. I really want to meet them." "Forget it," Ghost rolled his eyes and said. "With your brute strength, You can destroy the entire sect with one punch. The vice sect master has his own ideas. As his subordinates, we only need to follow, Shadow said. Ghost shrugged and said, I'm just saying. Sect of all times, Dragon Head Peak. Li Luoqiu came to report again. According to the statistics, in the Battle of Mt. Qingling in West Fate Province, the righteous sects led by 2 first-rate sects lost more than 1,000 people. What about the Demon Emperor's Gate? 100 people were injured. Only injured but not dead. Yes. Jun Changxiao retracted his fishing rod and said, That's a bit powerful. Li Luoqiu said. According to the information sent by the spies, the disciples of the Demon Emperor's Gate are all Devil Cultivator S, and they can forcefully activate their strength. Although there are many people from the righteous sects, they are completely crushed. After hiding in the dark for so long, they suddenly came out in the open. Naturally, they came prepared. If the righteous sects do not treat them seriously, they will suffer a great loss. Jun Changxiao said. Li Luoqiu then said, Many of the first-rate sects have already made their move. In my opinion, the show has just begun. Jun Changxiao hung the bait, swung the rod out and laughed. So we are in charge of watching the show. He needed to grasp the world's situation, but he was not interested in participating in this kind of battle between the righteous and the demonic. After all, it was not against him. Moreover, Jun Changxiao was very curious. Just how capable was this Demon Emperor's Gate to dare to challenge the entire continent's righteous sects? The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate had broken the peace that had existed for a long time. It also made many martial artists realize that the world was about to become unstable. Sure enough, a few days later, a few top sects led by Taishian Shengzong sent out invitations, inviting the upper echelons of the various sects to discuss how to suppress the Demon Emperor's Gate. The sect of all times also received an invitation, but Jun Changxiao only took a glance before crushing the invitation, and said, I am not interested in participating in the matters between you righteous and demonic. I just want to be a leisurely spectator. Patriarch, Elder Ma of the Tsongshan sect has come to see you. In the main hall, Ma Yunting sat at the head of the table, his expression a little ugly. Yesterday, the sect received an invitation to head to the Huiying Mountain to discuss the matter of suppressing the Demon Emperor's Gate. Songshan sect had heard about the Demon Emperor's Gate. They definitely couldn't afford to offend this kind of power that could easily destroy fourth-rate sections. But it would be embarrassing if they didn't go, so the upper echelons were very conflicted. In the end, they sent Ma Yunting to the sect of all times to ask for Jun Patriarch's opinion. I won't go. Jun Changxiao gave his opinion. Ma Yunting said bitterly. This way, it's the same as offending a few top sections. Jun Changxiao said. Elder Ma, the reason why these sects invited your sect is to act as cannon fodder when dealing with the Demon Emperor's Gate. That's why the sect master sent this old man to ask for Jun Patriarch's opinion. Ma Yunting said. Jun Changxiao said in a profound tone. The Demon Emperor's Gate has come out this time to target those large sections. Small sects like us don't have the strength to contend against it, so we can only watch from the sidelines. Ma Yunting. Songshan sect really doesn't have the strength to contend against it, but it's hard to say for the sect of all times. Understood. Ma Yunting stood up and cupped his hands. Songshan sect will follow Jun Patriarch and watch from the sidelines. After giving his opinion to this ally, Jun Changxiao thought of another ally, so he whispered, That woman won't foolishly go to the appointment, right? Patriarch. Li Luoqiu reported. Miaohua Palace received the invitation, and Palace Master she brought the elders to Yinghui Mountain. Jun Changxiao thought for a moment and said, I won't participate, but I can go and be a bystander. Thinking of this, he settled the sect's matters, then flew out and headed to Yinghui Mountain at an extremely fast speed. All the sects had gathered to discuss how to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate. As the patriarch of the sect of all times and a member of the circle, there was nothing wrong with Go Sheng going to take a look. Li Luoqiu, who was standing on Drizzle Peak, shook her head. With Patriarch's personality, something will definitely happen if he goes and takes a look. Chapter 938. There was a very special mountain in the falling star continent called Reflection Mountain. There was no abundant spirit chi on the mountain, and the scenery was ordinary, but it was worshipped by the world. Every year, there were countless martial artists who came here to play. Why? Because back then, the demon slaughtering order had been issued from here. From that day on, the famous righteous sects and the demon emperor sect fought to the death, leaving behind battles that were enough to be praised by future generations. Today, thousands of years later, under the operation of several first-rate sects, the upper echelons of the sects from all over the world once again rushed to Reflection Mountain. Of course, the Demon Emperor's Gate could not be compared to the Demon Emperor sect. The scale of the righteous sects this time was far less than 1/10 of that time. Patriarchy, Sect Master Gong. At the foot of Reflection Mountain, the two sect elders met and exchanged polite words. Then, they walked together on the historic stone stairs, their eyes full of awe. Back then, the ancestors negotiated on this mountain to suppress the Demon Emperor sect and exchanged thousands of years of peace for the falling star continent. The future generations would naturally remember it in their hearts. Today, they were invited by the first-rate sects to once again discuss how to suppress the Demon Emperor's Gate that had suddenly appeared. It gave them a sense of mission that they had never had before. The upper echelons of the sects who came later would be in awe every time they stopped at the foot of Reflection Mountain. In order to show their respect for the ancestors, even if they could fly up, they would choose to climb the mountain. Patriarch. A disciple stood at the foot of the mountain and said with admiration, "Although this Reflection Mountain looks very ordinary, this disciple feels a very familiar aura." The old man in embroidered clothes stood in front with his hands behind his back and said proudly, "Back then, when we suppressed the Demon Emperor sect, our bamboo spirit sect also sent people here." "I see," the disciple said in realization. "No wonder there is a familiar feeling. It turns out that the aura of the ancestors is still here. Let's go." The patriarch said, "Let's go up." Yes. Dozens of disciples followed him up the stairs, their hearts full of awe. Just as the martial artists of the various sects rushed over from all over the world and walked along the long mountain path, a stream of light flew toward the top of the mountain at an untimely time. This action instantly angered everyone. Who dares to fly on Reflection Mountain? In an instant, countless spiritual senses were released, enveloping the stream of light that was flying upwards. After seeing the other party's appearance, they exclaimed in unison, "The patriarch of the sect of all times! Why is he here?" Could it be that the first-rate sects also sent invitations to this shameless fellow? Jun Changshao, who was continuously ascending, suddenly stopped. His hair was not messy at all as he pointed at the sect leader halfway up the mountain and said, "You're spouting nonsense. I'll sue you for slander." The system said, "I think he's right." Jun Changshao ignored it and flew up the mountain again, leaving behind a group of angry senior members of the various sections. "Damn it. This Jun Changshao is too arrogant," one of the sect elders said angrily. "I haven't heard any news about the sect of all times recently. I thought they had changed their way of keeping a low profile. I didn't expect them to come to Reflection Mountain," someone said in surprise. Needless to say, ever since the end of the culinary god competition, the sect of all times had not caused any trouble in the martial arts world for a long time, so much so that everyone almost had nothing to talk about. It was mainly because of the appearance of the plain battlefield teleportation gate, which distracted Jun Changshao a lot of his attention. The disciples also had new dungeons, so they naturally wouldn't go out to play. In short, how could they be in the mood to play with the martial artists of the falling star continent when they could compete with the experts of all realms? Shua. Jun Changshao landed on the top of the mountain. After ascending the mountain in advance, the senior members of the various sects who were bragging all turned their heads to look over, a trace of surprise appearing on their faces. Why is this guy here? Moreover, from the looks of it, he flew up directly. Umph. A middle-aged man in brocade clothes flashed with anger when he saw Jun Changshao. This person was the patriarch of the world-defying sacred sect, Ao Huanyu. His son, Ao Wushuang, participated in the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony, and was still lying in bed after being abused by Yi Xingchen. TSK, Jun Changxiao said. There are quite a few people. There were already 400 to 500 martial artists gathered at the top of the mountain. Among them were the patriarch of a second-rate sect, as well as the upper echelons of a second-rate and third-rate sect. Of course, there were also quite a few sects who had grudges with the sect of all times. For example, the world-defying sacred sect, or the bright light sacred sect, who had fought for the mine, as well as the great development sacred sect, and the heavenly dipper sacred sect. Every year, there would be a martial arts competition in Hua Mountain, and those who participated were only third-rate and fourth-rate sections. Today, it was very common for first-rate and second-rate sects to gather at Reflection Mountain. Everyone, Jun Changxiao cupped his hands and said, "Don't misunderstand, I am only here to watch the show." The faces of the elders of the various sects darkened. So many sects of the Falling Star continent had gathered together to discuss how to eradicate the sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate. It was an incomparably serious matter, and he actually came to watch the show. Wasn't that the same as watching the joke of the entire continent? Jun Patriarch. Ao Huanyu said with a cold face. Since your sect of all times is not participating, please go back. What's wrong? Jun Changxiao sat in front of a huge rock and said with a sloppy look, Is Reflection Mountain your home? No one is allowed to come up. Seeing his arrogant appearance, the elders of the various sects wanted to walk up and rub their faces against the ground. If it was really implemented, the result would be that the mountain would be flattened and their faces would be fine. After all, they had received the power from the upper realm, so the quality was guaranteed. Jun Changxiao's words made Ao Huanyu speechless. Jun Patriarch. A kind-looking old man walked out and said with a serious expression, The sudden appearance of the Demon Emperor's Gate is no small matter. Since we are righteous sects, how can we stay out of this? I'm sorry. Jun Changxiao interrupted. My sect of all times has never claimed to be a righteous sect. You want to pull me into a pit? There's no door or window. However, this sentence brought harm to the various sections. After all, they claimed to be righteous sections. Wasn't this guy trying to find a way to say that they were sanctimonious? Besides, Jun Changxiao continued, there are several Wu Sheng overseeing the Demon Emperor's Gate. My sect of all times' strength is limited. Even if we wallow in the mire with you, we won't be of much help. Speaking was an art. Go Sheng was interpreting another art, so he didn't know how to speak. He was sanctimonious and wallowing in the mire. The various sects couldn't bear to look at him directly. Jun Changxiao. Ao Huanyu said angrily. I think you're here to pick a fight. Jun Changxiao said indifferently. You're not a ripe melon. I have nothing better to do, so I came all the way here to pick a fight. The leaders of the various sects glared at each other, and the originally amiable atmosphere was replaced by solemnity. How masterly guessed right. With Go Sheng's character, coming to take a look was definitely not a good thing. Jun Patriarch. At this moment a light voice came from behind. You're really here? Shi Jingxian walked over, her face full of joy. Zhang Sunfenghua and Leng Xingyue, who were following behind, looked at each other, and finally understood why the palace master came to Yinghui Mountain. It turned out that she wanted to see this kid. No. Why did the leaders of the various sects look so ugly? Why did they look at Jun Changxiao with unfriendly eyes? Did this guy offend all of them? Palace Master Shi, Jun Changxiao said. It's better to leave dealing with the Demon Emperor's Gate to the various sects present. Fourth and fifth-rate sects like us shouldn't blindly get involved. When the leaders of the various sects heard this, they became even angrier. It's fine if your sect of all times doesn't participate in the crusade against the Demon Emperor's Gate, but you even instigated the other sects not to participate. You're just a fucking shit-stirrer. Shi Jingxian smiled and said, Jun Patriarch, I came to Yinghui Mountain just to see the scenery. I see. Jun Changxiao jumped down from the boulder, pointed to the sea of clouds in the distance, and said with a smile, Come, let's go over there to enjoy the scenery. Let's not disturb the leaders of the various sects discussing important matters. Shi Jingxian was stunned and followed with a red face. Zhang Sunfanghua and Leng Xingyue were tactful and didn't follow, especially when they looked at the backs of the palace master and Jun Changshao. They suddenly felt that the two were a match made in heaven. The leaders of the various sects forcefully suppressed their anger and continued to wait for the arrival of the other sections. However, when they occasionally saw Jun Changshao and Shi Jingxian chatting and laughing in the distance, they couldn't help but feel angry. In such a sacred place, that guy was actually openly flirting. Chapter 939. In the Sea of Clouds. Jun Changshao sat on a rock, vividly telling Shi Jingxian a story. As for the content of the story, there was no need to mention it. Seeing him flirt in front of them, the leaders of the various sects were extremely angry, but they could only suppress their anger and begin to communicate with each other. This time, they gathered at Yinghui Mountain not to be angry, but to discuss how to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate. As for Jun Changshao, this shit-stirrer, if he didn't participate then so be it. There were countless sects in the world anyway, so one more wouldn't make a difference. The actions of the leaders of the various sects were correct. The best way to deal with this kind of shameless person was to tolerate him, let him go, and ignore him. Half an hour later, 1,000 people gathered at the top of Yinghui Mountain. There were at least 100 sects from all over the world. 5 first-rate sects, 20 second-rate sects, and the rest were all third, fourth, and fifth-rate sections. The leaders of the various sects gathered together and began to discuss how to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate quickly and efficiently. Palace Master Shi Gosheng said with a smile, "What do you think they will do to deal with the Demon Emperor's Gate?" Shi Jingxian adjusted her glasses and said, "Unite all the sects together and have them send their own people to attack the Demon Emperor's Gate." Jun Changshao was stunned, because this woman was thinking the same thing as him. Shi Jingxian had guessed correctly. After a careful discussion, the sects reached a consensus and decided to form an alliance to deal with the remnants of the demon sect. This consensus was made by the first and second-rate sects, and the third, fourth, and fifth-rate sects just went through the motions and nodded their heads. In fact, before they came to Yinghui Mountain, they had already expected this result. Because their levels weren't high enough, and they didn't have enough authority, they could only cooperate with the large sections. To put it bluntly, the sects that weren't high level all had the awareness of being cannon fodder. Since that was the case, why did they still have to be silly? Because since they were in the circle, since they were invited, they had to brace themselves and come if they wanted to stay in the circle. For example, after receiving the invitation, wasn't Songshan sect also very conflicted about whether to participate or not? If it weren't for Jun Changshao's suggestion, and because they didn't want to offend the large sects, they would have already come. In Jianghu, one had no choice. Although Jun Changshao was in the pugilistic world, he was an exception because with the current strength of the sect of all times, he dared to reject the invitation and dared to argue with the major sects on the mountaintop. To be able to ignore or break the rules, one must first have sufficient strength. Those fourth and fifth-rate sects could not do it, and could only follow behind the big sects as cannon fodder. The originally clear sky was suddenly filled with dark clouds from afar, and a drizzle began to fall. The cultivation levels of the various sects and clans at Reflection Mountain were not low, so the rain couldn't fall on them. They were still discussing seriously. Now that the alliance had been decided, they would definitely discuss how to attack the Demon Emperor's Gate. However, when it came to confidential matters, they all communicated via voice transmission. Occasionally, they would look at Jun Changshao warily, seemingly worried that he would eavesdrop on them. He was worrying too much. Jun Changshao had really come to Reflection Mountain to watch the show. He didn't care at all about how the various sects were targeting the Demon Emperor's Gate. The dark clouds that had gathered in the sky were pushed away by the wind. After the sun came out, a rainbow gradually appeared. "So beautiful," Shi Jingxian exclaimed. Jun Changshao said, "After the rain, there are water droplets in the air. When the sun shines at a low angle, it will produce such a natural wonder." "Jun Patriarch knows a lot," Shi Jingxian said. Jun Changshao said modestly, "I only know a little about a lot of things." Everyone, At this moment, the kind-looking old man said, "It's decided. Please make more preparations when you go back." The big shots of the various sects cupped their hands. Obviously, when Jun Changshao accompanied Shi Jingxian to see the rainbow, they had already discussed everything. Goodbye. Goodbye. Just as the big shots of the various sects were about to leave, another dark cloud came from afar, and it emitted an extremely gloomy aura. Jun Changshao said to himself, "Demonic cultivator?" Because Yao Minjing walked the path of a demonic cultivator, he was very familiar with this kind of aura. The big shots of the various sects also noticed it, and their expressions suddenly became serious. Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, several black streams of light flew over with a sky full of demonic aura, and then hung on the peak of Reflection Mountain. There were a total of 5 people. 4 of them were old men in black robes, standing on the left and right respectively. In the middle was a handsome young man. That's right. It was the person Jun Changshao saw in Maple Valley. The person who might be a woman disguised as a man. Although the 4 old men in black robes had different appearances, they were all covered with a chilling demonic aura. Wusheng. Jun Changshao used the voice transmission technique without changing his expression. Inform the sect and ask Hall Master Z and Old Ding to rush over as soon as possible. Yes. The members of the Drizzle Hall at the foot of the mountain received the Patriarch's order and hurriedly sent the message further away. In a short time, Li Luochio, who was in the Sect of all times, had already received the message. Swish, swish. The Purple King and Old Ding didn't finish their meal and flew to Reflection Mountain at full speed. This kind of information transmission and movement was really super fast, and no sect in the Falling Star continent could compare to it. As expected, Li Luochio shook her head and said, "Something really happened." Using 2 of the sect's top forces made her guess that the situation might not be small. Back at Reflection Mountain, when a young man and 4 Wusheng appeared in the sky, the atmosphere suddenly became very serious. The kind-looking old man was someone who had been through a lot. He said in a deep voice, "Who are you? Let me introduce myself." The young man, who was even more handsome than Jun Changshao, smiled gently and said, "My surname is Yuan. You can call me Yuan Gongzi, or you can call me the Demon Emperor's Gate Deputy Sect Master." Demon Emperor's Gate? The faces of the big shots of the various sects changed. This time, they gathered at Reflection Mountain to discuss how to eradicate this demon sect. Now the main character was here. "So this guy is the Deputy Sect Master," Jun Changshao said secretly. Thinking that this person once said that he wanted to break the current rules and establish a new one, it seemed normal that he dared to become enemies with the famous righteous sections. Shi Jingxian transmitted her voice. "Jun Patriarch, the situation is not good. Let's leave quickly. Everyone." Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said, "You guys chat, we'll leave first." He had no interest in participating in the matter between the Demon Emperor's Gate and the famous righteous sections. He just wanted to be a quiet spectator. "Jun Patriarch." Yuan Gongzi smiled and said, "We're old friends. Are you leaving without chatting for a while?" Jun Changshao's eyes flashed with a trace of displeasure. When this guy said old friends, he deliberately emphasized his tone, making it clear that he wanted the sects to have wild thoughts. Sure enough, when the big shots of the various sects heard this, their imaginations went wild. They even suspected that the Sect of all times and the Demon Emperor's Gate were in cahoots. The other party's sudden attack might have been him who leaked the secret. "Yuan Gongzi," Jun Changshao said lightly, "you and I have only met once. We can't be considered friends. When we met in the purple bamboo forest in Maple Valley, Jun Patriarch and I had a good chat. How can we not be friends?" Yuan Gongzi smiled and said, "Damn you, do you have to drag me down?" "Humph." Ao Huanyu sneered and said, "So Jun Patriarch and the Demon Emperor's Gate's Deputy Sect Master are old friends. No wonder they came uninvited." The big shots of the various sects glared at Jun Changshao. In the beginning, this guy's arrogance made them very angry, but they just didn't like his arrogant attitude. Now, under the instigation of the Demon Emperor's Gate's Deputy Sect Master, they realized that this guy might be an enemy. So their angry eyes were filled with strong hostility. Kid, Jun Changshao looked at Yuan Gongzi and said coldly, I said in the purple bamboo forest, don't try to threaten me, and don't repeatedly challenge my bottom line. You seem to have forgotten? Chapter 940. Yuan Gongzi, who had suddenly appeared, kept emphasizing that he was friends with Jun Changshao. His goal was to pit him against the righteous sects. The effect was good. The leaders of the various sects were already suspicious. Jun Changshao could naturally see through Yuan Gongzi's intentions, so he was very angry now. His sect of all times really didn't want to get involved in the matter between the Demon Emperor's Gate and the righteous sects. But this kind of behavior of forcefully dragging people into the water was really too annoying. Yuan Gongzi obviously didn't realize that his thoughts had angered Jun Changshao. He smiled and said, I've always remembered what Jun Patriarch said. I've never forgotten it. Is that so? Jun Changshao's face was gloomy. Back then in the purple bamboo forest, because there were hidden experts, he suppressed himself and didn't make a move. Although there were 4 Wusheng here today, the urge to beat the other party up was even stronger. The main thing was that those words were too annoying. Yuan Gongzi, Jun Changshao said coldly, I'm just here to be a bystander, but you insist on dragging me into the water. Fine, from now on we're enemies. TSK. Ao Huanyu and the others sneered. In their opinion, Jun Changshao was very likely to have colluded with the Demon Emperor sect. Now, every word he said and every expression on his face was an act. Jun Patriarch, Yuan Gongzi said seriously, since we can't be friends, we can't be enemies. Then why are you fucking tricking me? Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a heavy aura appeared in the sky. The power of dragons and elephants gathered, and then brazenly pressed down on Yuan Gongzi. When the dragon-elephant prajna palm was used, dozens of dragons and elephants shone brightly, instantly making the world lose its color. The leaders of the various sects were all shocked. They had never seen such a desolate aura that seemed to come from the endless starry sky. Arrogant. Wu Sheng, who was standing in front of Yuan Gongzi, waved his hand coldly. Vast and mighty demonic energy whizzed out and gathered in the air, forming a fist that soared into the sky and blasted towards the dragon-elephant force that was pressing down. Ka. The condensed power of a demonic cultivator at the level of Wu Sheng mercilessly tore the space apart. That terrifying evil chi crazily spread out, causing the martial artists of the various sects to turn pale with fright. Boom! At this moment, there was a deafening explosion. The demonic cultivator at Wu Sheng's level fell down the mountain like a cannonball. The whole process happened in the blink of an eye. Before the other 3 Wu Sheng came to their senses, they felt the overwhelming demon aura pressing down on them, forcing them to retreat in different directions subconsciously. As such, Yuan Gongzi no longer had any protection. He could only look on helplessly as the dracophant force pressed down. In the end, he said in horror, No! Boom! The terrifying force pressed down on the top of Mount Yinghui. The entire mountain shook violently and showed varying degrees of cracks. The martial artists of the various sects gradually stabilized their bodies. Their expressions changed again and again, and they exclaimed in their hearts, What kind of martial arts is this? Its power is so terrifying. Without time to think, they all looked up. Higher up, a naked purple-haired man wearing only red underwear was floating proudly. That's right. It was the Purple King. When Jun Changshao made his move, he had already rushed over. After receiving the order, he quickly exploded his clothes and forced the 4 Wusheng, who were blocking the dracophant force, to retreat. The elders of the various sects were collectively dumbfounded. The aura of this purple-haired man was even stranger than that of the 4 demonic cultivators just now. Moreover, after appearing, he scared them all away. His strength was definitely extraordinary. Whoosh! 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 The 3 Wusheng demonic cultivators stabilized their bodies and looked at the Purple King with deep fear in their eyes. As for the Wusheng who tried to break the dracophant prajna palm, he was sent flying by the palm. His entire body seemed to have fallen apart as he lay in the deep pit at the foot of the mountain. Even the Earth-level experts of the dimensional battlefield couldn't withstand the Purple King's attack, let alone him. It had to be said, Jun Patriarch had foresight. When he saw Yuan Gongzi appear with 4 powerful fighters, he realized that there would be an unforeseen event. Thus, he contacted the Sect's experts in advance to rush over. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to act so smoothly. Walking to the edge of the deep pit caused by the Dracophant force, Jun Changxiao's psionic power turned into a large hand and grabbed Yuan Gongzi, who was lying inside, then pulled him in front of himself. Vice Sect leader. The 3 Wusheng were about to rush over. The Purple King landed and blocked their path. He said, "Whoever moves will die." 5 simple words vividly displayed his arrogance, and dominance. As expected of a Kuan from the upper realm, as expected of the hall master of the Sect of all times' spiritual hall. Although the 3 Wusheng wanted to save their Vice Sect leader, they could feel that the Purple King was releasing a demonic aura that was stronger than their own. They could only stand there with difficulty. "Kid." Jun Changxiao restrained Yuan Gongzi with his psionic power hand and said in a cold voice, "When we were in the purple bamboo forest, you challenged my bottom line. Since it was the first time we met, I didn't lower myself to your level. I didn't expect that when we meet again, you've become even worse. If I don't beat you up, how can I face the heavens and earth?" Wah! Yuan Gongzi spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was extremely pale. He, whose cultivation had reached the peak of Wu Huang's level, was already covered in bruises after receiving the dragon and elephant prajna palm. This was after Jun Changxiao showed mercy. Otherwise, if the dragon and elephant force was fully unleashed, even 10 Yuan Gongzi wouldn't be enough to kill him. Of course, judging from Yuan Gongzi's current sorry state, he was indeed a man. This was probably one of the reasons why Jun Changxiao attacked. After all, how could there be someone more handsome than himself in this world? Seeing that the self-proclaimed Vice Sect leader of the Demon Emperor's Gate, Yuan Gongzi, was severely injured in one move, the elders of the Sect of all times muttered in their hearts. Could it be that the patriarch of the Sect of all times was not in cahoots with him? Did we misunderstand? Listen up, all of you. At this moment, Jun Changxiao turned around and looked at the martial artists of the various sects present. He said angrily, "The Sect of all times is not interested in the matters between you all." This sentence contained the sword Dao, martial Dao, and the power of the 5 elements. It directly penetrated the hearts of the crowd, causing them to tremble in fear. Jun Patriarch is so scary. Looking at Jun Changxiao's angry back, Shi Jingshuan's bright eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. But she also secretly said, "But he's also very mighty." One sentence was enough to intimidate everyone present. He was indeed mighty and domineering. Plop! Jun Changxiao casually threw Yuan Gongzi to the ground, then sat on a huge rock and said indifferently, "I'm just here to watch the show. Please continue." Although beating up the Vice Sect leader of the Demon Emperor's Gate was partly to vent his anger, it was more to express to the elders of the various sects that he had nothing to do with him. Now he had made his stance clear. Naturally, he could continue to be a spectator. Vice Sect leader. 3 Wusheng quickly flew over. One of them carried Yuan Gongzi, then looked at each other, and flew into the distance with tacit understanding. They came quietly and left quietly, only taking the injured with them. As for Wu Sheng, who was blasted to the foot of the mountain, he had disappeared, leaving only a deep pit and a swastika shape. After the experts of the Demon Emperor's Gate left, the demonic aura that gathered at the top of the mountain gradually dissipated. The elders of the various sects breathed a sigh of relief. According to the normal plot, Yuan Gongzi would definitely teach the righteous sects a lesson when he brought 4 Wu Sheng here. In the end, he had to provoke Jun Changxiao, who remained neutral. Not only was he beaten up, but he was also beaten to the point that he couldn't stand up. The show couldn't continue, so it could only end abruptly. It was a classic example of not playing by the rules. Jun Patriarch. The kind-looking old man cupped his hands and said, "Thank you." Many elders of the various sects also cupped their hands and bowed, their eyes shining with gratitude. Although the top sects had also sent many experts, they were still far from being able to compete with the 4 Wusheng. If the other side really attacked, the consequences would be unimaginable. They ran away just like that. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I thought they would teach these sanctimonious righteous sects a lesson. The elders of the various sects twitched their mouths. Palace Master Shi, Jun Changshao said, we've seen the scenery. Why don't we go back first? Okay. Shi Jingxian nodded. Jun Changshao led the people of Miaohua Palace down Yinghui Mountain. The Purple King, who had been hovering in the air, coldly glanced at the elders of the various sects at the top of the mountain and said, trash. He had a grudge against these righteous sects. After all, he was sealed by Wuxia, a top sect. If it weren't for the patriarch, he definitely wouldn't have helped them resolve the crisis. Jun Patriarch. After walking down the mountain, Shi Jingxian was puzzled and asked, why didn't you kill the vice sect master of the Demon Emperor's Gate and get rid of the evil for the Falling Star continent? In the situation just now, Yuan Gongzi was seriously injured. Even a martial disciple could easily kill him. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, he's targeting the righteous sects, not the sect of all times. Naturally, there's no need to kill him. Shi Jingxian said, Jun Patriarch wants to see the Demon Emperor's Gate and the various sects fight? That's right. Jun Changshao said frankly. Zhang Sun Fanghua and Leng Xingyue, who were following behind, heard this and frowned slightly. They could understand why the sect of all times didn't participate. However, the Demon Emperor's Gate was threatening the continent and the living beings. Wasn't it a bit too much for them to just watch from the sidelines? The two of them had such thoughts because they prided themselves as righteous sects and had a sense of justice in their bones. A sense of justice. Jun Changshao had it too. However, he didn't have a good impression of the Demon Emperor's Gate and the righteous sects. Naturally, he wouldn't care. Shi Jingxian said, if the two sides fight, will it benefit Jun Patriarch? No. Jun Changshao was just watching the show. As for sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight and reap the benefits, he didn't care at all. This was what a qualified onlooker should be like. Shi Jingxian said, Jun Patriarch is different from others. You're different too, Gou Xing said with a smile. Shi Jingxian was stunned. Jun Changshao said telepathically, Palace Master Shi's appearance gives people a very weak feeling. However, to be able to become the Palace Master of Miaohua Palace and be called a Wonder Woman, you're definitely not an ordinary person. I just happened to take over a fourth-rate sect. I'm not like Jun Patriarch, who developed the ninth-rate Ironbone sect into the fourth-rate sect of all times. Shi Jingxian said with a smile. The system couldn't help but ridicule. What's the point of flattering each other? Palace Master Shi, Jun Changshao cupped his fists and said, I still have matters to attend to in the sect. Jun will take his leave first. Amen. Shi Jingxian had just finished speaking when Jun Changshao flew away, leaving behind the beauty looking at him with disappointment. Whoosh whoosh. In the dark and damp cave, firewood was lit. Not only did it dispel the cold air, but it also gradually emitted the fragrance of roasted meat. Sister Xia. Su Xiaoma handed over the roasted pheasant and said, eat until you're full. Your injuries will heal faster. Xia Shuiyin, who was sitting cross-legged, opened her eyes and calmly took the roasted pheasant. Then she turned around and ate. Sister Xia, you eat first. Su Xiaoma stood up and said, I'll go get some spring water for you. Wait. Xia Shuiyin turned her back to him and said, you're also heavily injured. Why don't you rest? If we all rest, who will protect Sister Xia? Su Xiaoma said with a smile. Then he left the cave to look for water. Xia Shuiyin fell silent. She recalled the scene a few days ago, when she was ambushed by the masked man in black, and used his back to block a palm strike for her. The layer of ice covering her heart slowly melted. Chapter 941. Back to forget it. Let's put it in a nutshell. Taixian Xingzong went to the Raging Waves Lake to eradicate a small group of demon sect members. But he was ambushed. The two sides fought fiercely, and the disciples were separated from the higher-ups in the end. Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyin were together when a masked man, whose strength was at the peak of Wuzong's level, suddenly attacked them. He hurriedly blocked a palm for her with his back, and then the two of them staggered into the depths of the forest. If he blocked a bullet for a girl in a critical moment, her favorability would definitely increase. Sister Xia. After a while, Su Xiaoma came in with the spring water and said with a smile, "The spring water here is very sweet." Xia Shuiyin took the water and drank it. Then she tried to stand up, but because her injuries had not completely healed, she was on the verge of collapsing. Su Xiaoma hurriedly reached out to support her and said, "You're so badly injured. Don't force yourself to stand up." Xia Shuiyin's expression changed slightly. She wanted to push this guy away, but she was afraid of aggravating her injuries, so she sat down again and said, "Let go of me." Su Xiaoma let go of her, and then retreated to the entrance of the cave, saying, "You recover, I'll protect you. Remember, you have to find the emotional point at all times to move the other party." Elder Wei's words rang in her ears. Swoosh. Su Xiaoma sat down with his back facing Xia Shuiyin. There was a dark palm print on his back, which was left behind by the masked man's attack. Seeing this, Xia Shuiyin remembered that he had sacrificed himself to save her, rolling on the ground and howling in pain. The coldness on her face dissipated. She lowered her head and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, "I'm sorry, I dragged you into this." Su Xiaoma said with a smile, "I'm honored to be able to block a palm for Sister Xia. Elder Wei, I think I'm about to succeed." If Elder Wei was here, he would definitely smile with relief. Glib tongue. Xia Shuiyin rolled her eyes at him and tried to stand up again. She leaned against the stone wall and said, "My injuries will take some time to recover. You should rest first." Su Xiaoma had just said one word when he saw the woman glaring at him. So he walked in and said, "All right." Hoo-hoo. His heart sutra was activated, and spiritual energy enveloped him. Xia Shuiyin, who was struggling to move to the front of the cave, saw this and her bright eyes were filled with surprise. He has actually comprehended the heart-approaching technique to the level of materializing spiritual energy. Lin Xianju was the highest-level mental cultivation method in the outer sect of Taishan Xingzong. Only those who were recognized by the higher-ups would be able to practice it. Su Xiaoma, who had been listed as one of the next batch of inner sect disciples, used only 1 month to comprehend it to the great accomplishment stage. It would be very easy for an expert with a saint-grade spiritual root to practice the mental cultivation technique of an outer court disciple. Of course, Su Xiaoma was just pretending. In fact, he was not injured at all. For hours later, the dark palm print on his back weakened a lot. He pretended to be energetic and stood up, saying, "Sister Xia." Because of her injuries, Xia Shuiyin fell asleep leaning against the stone wall at the entrance of the cave. Looking at her pale face, Su Xiaoma could not help but think, if not for my protection, this woman would have died in Nuteo Lake. He walked over. He took out a blanket from his space ring and covered Xia Shuiyin with it. Although he was very careful, he still woke her up. She suddenly opened her eyes, and a trace of coldness flashed through them. After confirming who it was, she became gentle. "Your injuries have healed." "Yes, almost." That masked man's strength was at the peak of Wuzong, and his martial arts were very strange. "How did you recover so quickly?" Faced with Xia Shuiyin's doubts, Su Xiaoma took out a broken tile and said, "This is a treasure that Master left for me to protect myself. It dissipated most of the power." "I see." Xia Shuiyin suddenly understood. "It's a pity," Su Xiaoma said bitterly. "It's broken now. When we return to the sect, I will ask my grandfather to give you another defensive treasure," Xia Shuiyin said. Su Xiaoma said with a smile, "Senior sister has already given me a bottle of tranquil heart and icy skin pills. How can I take your things?" As he spoke, he subconsciously touched his waist and said in surprise, "Where's the bottle? Where's my bottle? It's over. It must have fallen outside. I'll go look for it." Xia Shuiyin said, "It's just an empty bottle. Do you need to care so much?" Su Xiaoma stopped at the entrance of the cave and said, "For many people, it's just an ordinary bottle. But for me it's more precious than my life. Because it was given to me by Sister Xia." "Idiot," Xia Shuiyin said lightly. Then she waved her hand and took out the bottle of tranquil heart and icy skin pills. She said, "You fell into the cave when you were looking for water." Su Xiaoma happily picked it up and wiped it with his sleeve. When he was about to put it on his waist, he felt that it was not safe, so he directly stuffed it into his clothes. Xia Shuiyin saw this and muttered in her heart, "Since you like bottles so much, I'll give you a bunch when we go back." "That? Give me the broken treasure. I'll see if there's any possibility of repairing it. It's already broken. I don't think it can be repaired." Su Xiaoma handed over the tile and said to himself, "This is just a random tile I found. Don't let her see through it." Xia Shuiyin examined it, and then put it into her sleeve. She said, "It's already broken. Even the aura of the treasure is gone. It's impossible to repair it." Su Xiaoma's mouth twitched. "Big sister, if you can't fix it then give it to me. What do you mean by taking it away?" Xia Shuiyin saw that he was a little reluctant and said lightly, "I gave you a bottle, and you gave me a tile. We're even." You don't want to?" "I do." Xia Shuiyin's injuries were very serious, and there were no special healing pills. So Su Xiaoma was not in a hurry to take her away. Instead, he was responsible for taking care of her carefully. Occasionally, he would go out to collect herbs and brew a soup for her to recover her meridians. "You've learned medicine?" "Master is very proficient in the art of medicine. I learned a little bit when I was cultivating with him." "Oh," Xia Shuiyin said, "Your master, Old Man Jun Tian, is very powerful. He can scare off a herd of beasts with just one look." Su Xiaoma said as he brewed the herbs, "I'm not bragging. My master is erudite and knowledgeable. He's definitely one of the best in the world." "Knowledgeable?" Xia Shuiyin was interested. She asked, "What does he know?" "He knows martial arts, sword arts, alchemy formations and—" Su Xiaoma mumbled a lot, directly molding Jun Changshao into a super omnipotent existence. Fortunately, Gosheng was not present. Otherwise he would definitely kick him and roar, "You made me sound so awesome. How can I act in the future?" Xia Shuiyin said, "I'm really envious of your master. He can live a carefree life, unlike me who has to do everything according to a set schedule every day." Su Xiaoma said with a bitter smile, "Sister Xia has a special ice-type physique. She has an elder who's her grandfather, and is highly valued by the sect. Her future is bright. Is she still not satisfied?" Xia Shuiyin said, "There are too many rules in the sect. Don't you find it oppressive?" Su Xiaoma said with a self-deprecating smile, "To a genius like Sister Xia, it might be oppressive. But to an ordinary person like me, if I don't work hard, I'll lose everything. I'll become an existence that everyone laughs at." What a painful realization. "Have you heard of Lu Qianqian?" Xia Shuiyin suddenly asked. "Lu Qianqian?" Su Xiaoma said, "I heard senior brother's son mention her. It seems that she was once one of the top geniuses in Taishan Xingzong. Later, she was expelled for breaking the rules." "Yes." Xia Shuiyin shook her head and said, "She was expelled just because she entered the ice spring to cultivate without the permission of the higher-ups. Senior sister Lu's talent is higher than mine, but she can't break the restrictions set by the sect. How sad is that?" Senior sister was expelled for this reason? Su Xiaoma was secretly shocked. This was the most crucial information he got when he came to Taishan Xingzong as a spy. But a top genius was expelled because she went to the ice spring to cultivate without permission. Wasn't it too careless? "Impossible, impossible," Su Xiaoma said secretly. "This is probably the excuse of the higher-ups. Maybe there's another reason." Xia Shuiyin adjusted her slightly depressed state of mind and said with a cold face, "Don't tell anyone about this. Keep it to yourself forever." "Okay." Su Xiaoma nodded and then asked, "Sister Xia, I heard that this Lu Qianqian later joined the Sect of all times, and even participated in the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony." "That's right," Xia Shuiyin said. "I also didn't expect that after being crippled by the higher-ups and deprived of all the martial arts memories of the Taishan Xingzong, she would still have a chance to make a comeback." Damn. Su Xiaoma was secretly shocked. Senior sister was actually crippled by the Taishan Xingzong. If the patriarch knew about this, he would definitely explode on the spot. "The disciples of the sect of all times are very strong. I don't know what elixirs they took," Xia Shuiyin said. She had seen the dragon and tiger battle for hegemony on the screen, and also witnessed the strength of this new sect's disciples. Su Xiaoma said to himself, "You guys only saw how strong we were, but you didn't see how we cultivated." The molding room, the training tower, and the life and death secret realm. These kinds of martial arts facilities could increase one's strength, but the effort and sweat required were also dozens of times more than ordinary people. Gurgle gurgle. The medicine soup began to boil. Su Xiaoma collected his thoughts. After boiling for more than 10 minutes, he carefully poured it into a bowl. Splash. The calm surface of the lake suddenly rippled with water. Caught it, caught it. After a while, Su Xiaoma's head popped out of the water. He grabbed a big fish and said with a smile, "Senior sister, we have fish to eat tonight." It had to be said that the magic-modified facial mask was really awesome. It didn't even show its face when soaked in water. Pa! The big fish swung its tail and slapped Su Xiaoma's face. Then it dived into the water. "No way! This fish is so strong." Pfft! Seeing that his left face was red, Xia Shuiyan covered her mouth and laughed. Then she said, "You caught a strength fish. Its explosive power is not inferior to that of a peak martial disciple." "No wonder." Su Xiaomo rubbed his face and said angrily, "Today we must catch it and roast it." Gurgle. He dived into the water and quickly caught the escaping strength fish. Late at night, Su Xiaomo removed the fish's scales and internal organs. Then, he skewered the face-slapping fish and roasted it over the fire. Xia Shuiyan sat cross-legged and cultivated as usual. During this time, with the help of the medicine soup and mental cultivation method, her meridians had almost recovered. "Senior sister, the fish is ready." "Okay." Xia Shuiyan opened her bright eyes and took the roasted fish. Then she said, "My injuries are almost healed. We will return to the sect tomorrow." "Okay," Su Xiaoma said dejectedly in a low voice. "Good times are always short. What are you mumbling about?" Xia Shuiyan asked. Su Xiaoma said, "I have been very happy these few days with Sister Xia." Xia Shuiyan rolled her eyes at him and said, "Don't talk about me being injured and recuperating here." "Okay. The fish is well roasted." "Thank you." The next day, Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyan returned to Taishan Xingzong. "What? Sect of all times?" After receiving the latest report, Jun Changshao said with a stunned face, "Xiao Mu and Xia Shuiyan were alone in a cave for 5 or 6 days." "Yes," Li Luoqiu said. "This kid is not bad," Jun Changshao said. Coincidentally, Elder Wei was also in the study. He smiled with satisfaction and said, "Xiao Mu's comprehension is still not bad." At this point, he subconsciously looked at the patriarch and muttered in his heart, "The difference is like heaven and earth." "Oh right," Li Luoqiu said again. Xiao Mu said that the reason Lu Qianqian was expelled was because she entered the ice spring to cultivate without the approval of the higher-ups. "It's that simple?" Jun Changshao said. Li Luoqiu said. Xiao Mu guessed that it might be the Taishan Shengzong's explanation. There might be more to it. Tell him to pay more attention, and not just flirt with girls. Okay. After returning from Yinghui Mountain, Jun Changshao continued to focus on managing the sect, and decided to personally participate in the disciple recruitment next month. This was because the current number of members had reached more than 48,000, and it was very close to breaking through 50,000. However, the outside world was a little chaotic. To be exact, the sect of all times, which had not shocked the world for a long time, once again swept the entire Falling Star continent with an explosive topic. All the sects are discussing important matters at Yinghui Mountain. The patriarch of the sect of all times is also there. I heard that he is arguing with the big shots. He almost rolled up his sleeves and took action. The deputy sect master of the Demon Emperor's Gate rushed over with 4 Wu Sheng to cause trouble. In the end, he was beaten by Jun Patriarch until he couldn't stand up. According to the witnesses, Jun Patriarch used a strange martial skill at that time. He directly condensed some kind of illusion in mid-air. The power was quite explosive. There was also a guy with purple hair. Just by being naked, he intimidated 4 Wu Sheng, making them not dare to move at all. Oh my god! This sect of all times hasn't made any movements recently. I thought that they had disappeared without a trace. I didn't expect that when the news came, it would still be so explosive. The matter of Jun Changxiao acting pretentious at Yinghui Mountain was destined to become the topic of conversation after meals among the martial artists of the Falling Star continent. Of course, they were more concerned about when would the alliance of the major sects launch an attack on the Demon Emperor's gate. Just as the martial artists of the entire continent were anxiously waiting, another piece of news came from the West Cloud State. The Demon Emperor's gate had suddenly disappeared into thin air. The previous base was also empty. It can't be. After Jun Changxiao received the news, he was speechless. I was still counting on you to fight against the famous righteous sections. In the end, after being beaten up by me, you directly retreated into the shadows? Although the Demon Emperor's gate had disappeared, the masked men in black were still moving in the Jianghu. In just a few days, a few more sects had been destroyed. It was very obvious. This force had changed its strategy, from openly to secretly targeting the famous righteous sections. Bang! In a dark cave, an explosive sound could be heard, and a fist mark could be seen on the wall. Damn it! A boorish man clenched his fists in anger and said, Vice Sect leader has been beaten to such a state. Why are you still stopping us from finding trouble with the sect of all times? That's right. Ghost, who was leaning against a pillar at the side, said unhappily. Shadow said, Vice Sect leader has his own plans. We just need to listen to his orders. A boorish man's eyes were about to split open. I can't take this lying down. I have to find trouble with this sect. Shadow frowned slightly and was about to dissuade him. Injio spoke first. Vice Sect leader was seriously injured by Jun Changxiao's palm strike. Are you sure you are looking for trouble and not courting death? A boorish man paused and said, I can't beat the patriarch of the sect of all times, but I can beat the disciples of the sect of all times. That's right. Ghost's eyes lit up and said, we can bully the disciples of the sect of all times. Without Vice Sect leader's orders, don't act recklessly. Shadow said. Sigh. Ghost shrugged and said, I'm just saying. That night, Shadow discovered that Ghost and a boorish man had disappeared, so she frowned and said, those two fellows must have gone to find trouble with the sect of all times. I wish everyone a happy May Day. Looking for monthly votes and recommendation tickets at the end of the month. Chapter 942. Outside Ironbone Town. Thousands of young boys and girls gathered and looked up at the Ironbone Mountain that seemed to be hidden in the clouds. Their eyes were shining with excitement. Today was the day the sect of all times recruited disciples. They came from afar in hopes of passing the test and becoming a member of the sect. Taiju, a middle-aged man with wrinkles all over his face, said, Father believes that you will succeed. Judging from his appearance, he was not from a rich family. A 17 or 18-year-old boy standing in the group took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly. He said to himself, Father, your son will not let you down. Zhou Taiju, people from the eastern Haozhou. They were all ordinary people for generations. This time, accompanied by his father, he came to the sect of all times from afar in hopes of passing the test and becoming a disciple to bring honor to his ancestors. There were many ordinary young men like him. They did not have any cultivation path. If they wanted to stand out in a world where martial arts were respected, they could only choose to enter a sect. However, for many people, a sect was too high to reach. They could only enter if they were extremely talented. However, the sect of all times was different. As long as you had a skill, as long as you had some achievements in a certain area, you would have a chance to become a disciple. Therefore, on the day of recruitment, many young men gathered in Ironbone Town. Even if they might not pass the test, they were willing to give it a try. Tisk. A young man in embroidered clothes said lightly, These poor people dare to sign up. Who gave them the courage? As a direct descendant of a large family, he felt very embarrassed to participate in the test with a group of country bumpkins. Another direct descendant of a family standing next to him said in annoyance, The sect of all times should have divided the test in advance. Those with status and those with status will be tested, and those without status will be tested. That's right. Someone agreed. Those young men who were born poor could only pretend that they did not hear what the young masters said, even though they were very angry. Whoosh! At this moment, a stream of light flew down from Ironbone Mountain and stopped at the foot of the mountain. He can fly. This is Wu Huang. The young men's eyes were filled with strong admiration. However, when the light dissipated, a handsome young man in white clothes was revealed. They exclaimed in unison, Jun Patriarch. That's right. It was Jun Gosheng. Perhaps it was because he had too much free time. But the disciple recruitment that the Ning brothers were supposed to be in charge of was personally overseen by him today. Shua. Jun Changshao pointed at the brocade-clothed youngster and the other family members, beckoning them over. You guys come out. The 4 examinees were stunned, but they still walked out from the group. Where are you from? The He clan of the Southeast. The Ling family of the Southeastern Province. Southeast First State. The 4 of them reported their identities. When the youths who also came from the Southeast heard this, their expressions changed drastically. They thought to themselves, they're all direct descendants of big clans. Jun Changshao said, your identities are not simple. In order to distinguish you from the ordinary contestants, I have decided to give you a separate assessment. Individual assessment? The 4 of them were startled at first, but then their eyebrows danced in delight. That's right. We are all direct descendants of influential clans. Coming to the sect of all times to register for the assessment, we have to be different from a bunch of country bumpkins. Turn around. Shua. The 4 of them turned around at the same time. Jun Changshao pointed in the direction of Strongbone Town and said, follow this road. The assessment point is at the end. Yes. The 4 of them started walking. The brocade-clothed youngster came back to his senses and said with a puzzled face, Jun Patriarch, the end of this road is outside the borders of southwest Yangzhou. That's right. Jun Changshao said, it's outside the borders. Ha! The other 3 martial artists were dumbfounded. The assessment point was too far away. The brocade-clothed youngster's mouth twitched and said, Jun Patriarch. Don't talk nonsense. Jun Changshao interrupted forcefully and said with a sullen face, let's go quickly. We'll miss it if we're late. Shua. Shua. The 4 of them hurriedly moved. Jun Changshao shouted, run as fast as you can. Yes. The 4 of them took big strides and ran wildly on the wide road that extended beyond the borders. Jun Changshao retracted his gaze and looked at the examinees present. He said seriously, the sect of all times doesn't care about your identity or status. Since you're here to participate in the assessment, we'll treat you all equally. Some of the smarter examinees heard this and immediately understood that the direct descendants of the clans who were running along the road were not going to take the assessment individually. They were directly disqualified. The assessment begins. Jun Changshao said loudly. Only those who reach the top of the mountain within the stipulated time will pass the first round of the assessment. The examinees' eyes burned with passion. They had prepared for a long time for this day. Only by reaching the top of the mountain could they prove themselves. Jun Patriarch. Just as the examinees were eager to give it a try, a voice suddenly came from the back of the group. I heard that the disciples of your sect are very strong. I'd like to experience it for myself. Oh. Jun Changshao looked over and saw that the speaker was a muscular man. Chapter 943. Back then, when the god-slaughtering palace brought a large number of evil sects to fight, Jun Changshao built a life and death arena at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, at the edge of the arena stood thousands of youths, their eyes shining with anticipation. They were originally here to participate in the entrance examination, but they didn't expect someone to come and challenge them. They could use this opportunity to see how strong the disciples of the sect of all times were. Buzz! Streams of light appeared around the arena, and then gradually disappeared. Patriarch, Zhen Dejuan said, it has already been reinforced. Even if a semi-sage attacks it, it will not collapse. Yes. Jun Changshao looked at a boorish man in ghost and laughed. Are you guys prepared to fight 2 against 2, or 1 against 1? Is it okay to fight 1 against many? A boorish man grinned. Damn it. This guy was very arrogant. Jun Changshao said. If you think that you can beat my sect of all times by yourself, then it doesn't matter. A boorish man said. After all, this is your sect's territory, and there are so many people watching, so I naturally have to give Jun Patriarch face. Let's fight 1-on-1, but first, you must send your strongest disciple. I'm afraid I won't be able to fight to my heart's content. Don't worry, Jun Changshao said seriously. I will definitely let you fight to your heart's content. Shwa, shwa. At this moment, the core disciples of the sect of all times, led by Li Qingyang, all flew down from the mountain. They're all disciples participating in the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony. And Yi Xingchen. He's much more handsome than on the screen. When many girls saw the cold and arrogant Yi Xingchen, they were so excited that they almost screamed. From this, it could be seen that the youths who came to the sect of all times to participate in the examination really wanted to stand out. A portion of the girls were probably just trying to be in the same sect as their idol. This also meant that after experiencing the dragon-tiger battle for hegemony and the Shifeng suicide tower, Pei Aniu had become the sect of all times postcard. A boorish man and ghost were also sizing up the disciples of the sect of all times. Although their auras were not bad, their cultivation levels seemed to have just reached the king level. Disdain immediately appeared in their eyes. Patriarch, Li Qingyang asked in a low voice. What's the situation? These two. Jun Changshao pointed at a boorish man and ghost and said, Come challenge the sect of all times. Challenge. Xiao Ziji, Li Fei, and the others were stunned. Especially when he looked at a boorish man and ghost. It was as if he was looking at idiots. Judging from their auras, these two people should be emperor-level martial artists. However, their strength was definitely not on par with the profound-level martial artists of the planar battlefield. Wasn't taking the initiative to challenge just asking for a beating? Jun Patriarch. A boorish man crossed his arms and said with a look of disdain. Sending only these few people is not enough. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others were speechless. It was probably because of the hidden cultivation technique that he thought they were weak. Whether it's enough or not, we'll only know after we fight, Jun Changshao said. You two, please choose your opponents. A boorish man began to look carefully. Suddenly, he realized that one of the disciples of the sect of all times was staring coldly at him. There was obvious contempt in his eyes. He pointed and said, It's him. Who? Stars and clouds scatter, sun and moon take place. Sigh. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji both sighed. First, they were depressed because they were not chosen. Second, they were mourning for that guy. If you challenged us, you'd just be beaten up. If you challenged junior brother Yi, you'd better be prepared to have your dignity trampled on. Jun Changshao looked at Ghost and said, What about you? Ghost rubbed his chin and thought for a while. Then he looked at Xiao Ziji and said, It's him. Let's go to the arena, Jun Changshao said. Jun Patriarch. A boorish man said, I didn't come here to challenge you to a fight and then leave. So please call for more disciples who can take a beating. Ta. Yi Xingchen stepped onto the arena first and said calmly, You chose me. You're destined to fight only one battle. Is that so? A boorish man grinned. Then, he leaped onto the arena, which was reinforced by a formation. A thick aura immediately erupted. It was obvious that this person was very good at shaping his body. Xingchen, today is the day of disciple recruitment. Don't waste too much time. Make it quick, Jun Changshao said. Understood. Yi Xingchen stared at a boorish man from beginning to end. He judged what kind of martial artist he was from his aura and body. In his mind, he instantly came up with a method to beat him up 1,000 times. Director Li could use his mind to create a 3D building model. Yi Anyo could simulate all kinds of torture methods. The disciples of the sect of all times were all geniuses. Let's begin, Jun Changshao announced. Bang! As soon as he said that, a boorish man clenched his fists. His shirt suddenly exploded, revealing his solid muscles. The youths were stunned. Not only were his muscles well developed, but he also had many scars. In particular, There were dozens of scars on his back. It was obvious that he had gone through unimaginable trials of life and death. A boorish man said proudly, "To be able to achieve what I have today, I've gone through countless trials of life and death. Have you guys with soft skin and tender flesh experienced it before?" Martial artists who had reached the level of emperor could rely on spiritual energy to heal the scars on their body. A boorish man had never done so. He mainly used it to show off. The effect was very good. The youths who had not experienced much were deeply shocked by the scars on his body. "Children, I'll tell you today that a true martial artist can only become strong after going through trials of life and death," a boorish man said loudly. Whoosh! As soon as he finished speaking, a large hand formed by spiritual energy pressed down from above. The force it carried was like a tsunami. Not good. Boom! An explosive sound came from the arena, and the spiritual energy spread out in all directions. Fortunately, Zhen Dijuan had used the array in advance. Otherwise, the entire arena would have been reduced to nothingness by this palm. The youths were standing far away, but they felt the remaining power sweeping over. They retreated dozens of steps in horror, and then looked at the arena together. They saw that the guy who was covered in scars, as if he was in a class with them, was lying on the ground with a ferocious expression. Ghost, who had been smiling all the time, saw his companion being beaten down by a palm. His smile froze. Impossible. A boorish man was a fourth-class Wu Huang, and his body was very strong. Even if he was facing a fifth-class or sixth-class emperor, it was impossible for him to be beaten down directly. Shua. Yi Xingchen strode over. Dense spiritual energy condensed in his fist. He said coldly, "Have you ever died?" A boorish man had never died, because if he had died, he would not have appeared here. However, the Ninth Arch had died once, and he had truly experienced death. Therefore, what right did he have to talk about experiencing life and death in front of him? What right did he have to show off in front of him? Boom! 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 Violent power spread crazily in the arena. Waves of water rippled crazily. The corners of the youths' mouths twitched. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji could not bear to look, and turned their faces away. After 10 minutes of crazy violence, Yi Xingchen finally stopped. The arrogant boorish man was lying on the arena. There were many fractures all over his body. His face was deformed. He had completely fainted. Of course, there were also benefits. There were many more scars on his body. He could show off in front of others better. Bang! After kicking the half-dead boorish man down, Yi Xingchen looked at Ghost, who was in a daze, and said coldly, "Get up here." Chapter 944. It was Ghost who instigated him to come to the Sect of all times. It was also Ghost's idea to use the recruitment day to issue a challenge. In his opinion, the Sect of all times would definitely accept the challenge. After all, they had a lot of prestige in the pugilistic world. That's right. Jun Changsha would not reject any challenge. As long as they dared to come, he would accompany them. Everything was under Ghost's control. He was also happily thinking that once he beat up the Sect of all times disciple and spread the news, it would definitely embarrass the Sect. This guy also knew that Jun Changsha was very strong. If he challenged him, it would definitely be a tragedy. Since he couldn't directly help the Vice Sect Master take revenge, he could only start with the disciple and cause the Sect of all times' reputation to fall. But when a boorish man was beaten down and then ravaged crazily, the plan and plot that was under his control suddenly went awry. "Get up here," Yi Xingchen said coldly. "God, so handsome. I really hope to become a Sect of all times disciple immediately." Many girls clasped their hands together and looked at Yi Xingchen, who was acting like a domineering CEO. Ghost, who was standing below the stage, was already drenched in cold sweat. A boorish man was being beaten to the point that he couldn't fight back. Although he was stronger than him, he was only slightly stronger. If he went up, he would definitely be beaten up. This guy finally understood that coming to the Sect of all times was to be beaten up. Ghost really wanted to leave now, but it was already too late. The other party had come out to receive the guest. Calm down, calm down. Ghost took a deep breath and looked at Xiao Ziji. "I didn't choose you. I chose him. Yi Xingchen couldn't be provoked, but this guy could. Junior brother Yi. Xiao Ziji said, he's mine. Trash. Yi Xingchen said coldly, and then walked down the stage. Please. Xiao Ziji cupped his hands and said. Seeing Yi Xingchen walk down, Ghost completely relaxed. He then jumped into the arena and thought to himself. The opponent I chose has the same heavy aura as a boorish man. He should be a cultivator of the physical body. As long as I'm fast enough, I should be able to finish him off easily. He was smart enough to choose his opponent after careful consideration. Unlike a boorish man, when he saw Yi Xingchen looking down on him, he chose him without hesitation. Shua. Xiao Ziji jumped up. Let's begin, Jun Changshao said impatiently. Originally, he thought that a boorish man had some strength, but in the end, he was easily defeated by his disciple. Therefore, he was not interested in the following battle. It was better to end it early and continue with the business of recruiting disciples. Shua, shua, shua. On the stage, Ghost displayed his movement technique and instantly transformed into a dense mass of black shadows. Xiao Ziji stood in place, unmoving like a mountain. Whoosh! At this moment, Ghost seized the opportunity and suddenly jumped behind Yi Xingchen. A gloomy aura appeared in his right palm, and he suddenly attacked. Bang! Xiao Ziji did not dodge and let the opponent hit his back. He then stood there motionlessly. Ghost's eyes were filled with astonishment. Your strength is too weak. Be stronger, Xiao Ziji said. Damn it! Ghost displayed his movement technique and retreated several steps. Then, his right hand quickly formed a seal and condensed an even stronger energy to attack. Bang! 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 The three powerful palms all hit Xiao Ziji's back, but the opponent was still as steady as Mount Tai. He said with dissatisfaction. Can you be a bit stronger? Ghost's mouth twitched. This palm technique was definitely his killer move. Moreover, after 3 consecutive attacks, Yi Xingchen did not retreat at all. This hurt his pride a bit. This person can't dodge. This means that his physical body is strong, but his speed is weak. Even if he can withstand it, he will be nothing more than a punching bag. Ghost analyzed the situation and came up with a plan. If 1 or 2 attacks were not enough, then he would do it a few more times. Shua, shua. Displaying his movement technique, black shadows crisscrossed. At that moment, Ghost perfectly displayed his advantage of being fast. Sometimes he would dodge left and right. Sometimes he would jump up and down. The boy and girl were so shocked that their mouths gradually opened. They even wondered if they had seen a ghost. Bang! Bang! The sound of explosions could be heard frequently. In a short period of time, Ghost relied on his movement technique to find Xiao Ziji's flaws and constantly attacked him. After dozens of attacks, he stood at the edge of the stage panting. He held his head and roared. Why is he not affected at all? After attacking so many times, he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy. However, the opponent was still standing there like a mountain. That feeling was really despairing. Sigh. Xiao Ziji turned around and said, Your strength is only so high. I stood there and let you hit me for so long. Bullshit. Ghost roared. You obviously can't dodge. Whoosh! Before he finished speaking, a strong spiritual energy suddenly exploded in front of him. He saw Xiao Ziji appear in front of him in a stride. His right hand condensed a strong earth element power and suddenly blasted it. Ghost's pupils suddenly shrank. It's over. Bang. Xiao Ziji's punch came. The speed and strength of the punch were like a cannon, and it directly hit Ghost's chest. The camera slowed down infinitely. First, the opponent's expression slowly changed. Then his feet slowly left the ground, and his body flew backward in a half bow. Boom! The camera returned to normal. Ghost flew out of the arena with a whoosh. Then, after smashing through more than a dozen trees, he fell like a puddle of mud several hundred meters away. His chest was dented with a fist mark, and he fainted on the spot. He couldn't afford to offend Yi Xingchen. He also couldn't afford to offend Xiao Ziji. He couldn't afford to offend any of the core disciples of the sect of all times. Men, Jun Changshao said, put these 2 guys in jail. Yes, Li Fei Long Xiang, and the others carried the half-dead a boorish man and Ghost then flew to the sect of all times. Sai Ing, who was hiding in the distance, saw the two of them being captured and thought to herself, "This is the result of courting death." When she rushed over, a boorish man and ghost had already issued the challenge, so it was too late to stop them. She could only hide in the dark and watch. Ing wasn't surprised at all by this result. After all, the vice sect master had repeatedly warned her not to provoke the sect. They must be strong. Whoosh! Ing didn't stay for long, and quietly left to deliver the news. But just as she turned around, she saw a cold woman in white standing on a tree in front of her. "Since you're here, don't go back," Lu Qianqian said lightly. Although Ing was a little surprised that she was discovered, she calmed down and smiled. "Can you stop me?" Whoosh! She used an unfathomable movement skill and flew over from the other side. Whoosh! 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 However, a strong cold air quickly spread from behind and stuck to his body, forming specks of frost, causing his speed to be greatly reduced in an instant. Ying's expression changed slightly, just as she was about to circulate her spiritual energy to dispel the chill around her. A sword flashed, and then she raised her hands and landed on the ground. Lu Qianqian held her sword to her neck and said, "I can." Further away, seeing that Ing was also captured, Injio shook his head and said, "Girl, although you have the ability to come and go without a trace, you're too close to the sect of all times. It's normal for you to be discovered." "Sigh. I'll go back and deliver the news." Boom! There was an explosion, and the ground suddenly sank into a deep pit. Injio rolled his eyes and fainted in the center area. Woody slowly descended from the sky and said with his mouth twitching, "This guy is so weak. Wild wave is a kind of attitude. Wild wave is not restrained." Creak! When Zhao Daoda sang emotionally, the prison door suddenly opened, so he quickly shut his mouth and said, "We have new cellmates." Plop! 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 A boorish man, ghost, and Injio were thrown over. "TSK, TSK. Zhao Daoda walked over and saw that they had all fainted, so he said sympathetically, "You were tortured quite badly. Brother." He waved at Dai Lu, who was facing the wall, and said, "Come and welcome our new cellmates." Chapter 945. Of the 4 protectors of the Demon Emperor's Gate, 3 of them were locked up in the men's prison, with Zhao Daodu and Dai Lu. The last one was locked up in the women's prison with the 9 Poison Temple's palace master. A boorish man and ghost ended up like this, which could be considered as them reaping what they sowed. But Shadow and Een Dove were also caught, which was a bit like being unjustly implicated. To be exact, it was all because of their pig teammates, especially Ghost. Why did he say that? Because when he fought with Xiao Ziji, whether it was his movement or palm technique, they all contained an evil aura, which made it easy for Jun Changxiao to determine that he might be a demonic cultivator. Thinking about how he had just beaten up the Demon Emperor's Gate's vice gate master not long ago, and now there was a demonic cultivator pretending to challenge him, there must be some relationship between the two. "I've sinned." During the battle, Jun Changxiao transmitted his voice. "Take care of this guy with one punch." Yes, Xiao Ziji received the Patriarch's order, no longer being a punching bag. He used his full speed and strength, and directly took care of Ghost. If the two were sent by the Demon Emperor's Gate, then there might be other companions hiding in the dark, so Jun Changxiao ordered Lu Qianqian and the others to pay more attention. In the end, they really caught 2 more. Don't be afraid of a godlike opponent, but be afraid of a pig-like teammate. Words of wisdom. Yuan Gongzi. Jun Changxiao's gaze was cold. "You're challenging my bottom line again." If the Demon Emperor's Gate's vice gate master who was lying on the sickbed knew about this, he would definitely spit out 3 liters of blood. "Jun Patriarch, this matter has nothing to do with me. They went there without permission." "Patriarch." Li Qingyang walked into the main hall. "How should we deal with these 4 people?" Jun Changxiao said, "I was just worried that I couldn't find the hiding place of the Darkness Sect. Now that they've taken the initiative to deliver their heads to me, I naturally have to." With a cold expression he said, "Interrogate them with torture." He seemed to be neutral in the matter between the Demon Emperor's Gate and the righteous sects. But in reality, He was searching for the Darkness Sect's base while the two sides were fighting. In the past, Jun Changshao had ambushed the disciples of the sect many times. Naturally, he would not let the matter rest. However, the Darkness Sect had been hiding for many years. Since they dared to stand in the open with the identity of the Demon Emperor's Gate, they definitely had nothing to fear. Even if they mobilized the power of their sects to wipe them out, they might be replaced by the Demon Monarch faction or Demon Monarch Palace. To deal with this kind of power, as long as he attacked, it had to be fatal. The Drizzle Hall's intelligence network was already in full operation. Jiangya was searching for clues all over the world. As long as the Demon Emperor's Gate continued to cause trouble with the righteous sects, they would be exposed sooner or later. This was also why the vice sect master of the Demon Emperor's Gate, who could have easily killed him at Reflection Mountain, had let him go. Because the other party might only be one of the leaders, killing him would have no effect, and it might even make the other party more vigilant. Jun Changshao pretended to be a neutral party. You guys kill by yourselves, I'll be in charge of watching the show. In reality, I'll be in charge of the overall situation in the dark. I'll wait until I find the Darkness Sect that had repeatedly targeted me. Then, I'll use Aria's sexy leather whip to whip them. Now, catching 4 demonic cultivators was definitely a good opportunity. Did you take away the things they used to commit suicide? Jun Changshao asked. Li Qingyang said, Patriarch's foresight is godly. These people hid poison in their mouths, sleeves, and boots. This disciple fed them to the goats. After eating, they immediately died. It's not surprising that a death warrior would do such a thing, Jun Changshao said. Patriarch. Lu Wancher walked in and wiped his tears. The few goats that disciple raised suddenly all died for no reason. Li Qingyang was silent, he quietly retreated, and then disappeared like the wind. Ah! Lu Wancher chased out of the hall with a kitchen knife and roared loudly. Second senior brother. You dare to poison my goats. In the cell, Zhao Daodu placed one leg on the bed and said, Seeing how the 3 of you were tortured so miserably, you must have offended the sect of all times to death. As the number 1 prisoner, he had experienced a lot of fellow prisoners. As long as he was injured when he entered, he would be able to deduce a few things. However, Zhao Daoda said, Don't worry too much from my experience. As long as the sect you represent pays enough ransom, you will definitely be politely released. You might even be given a meal. He was talking about the captured semi-sage of the world-defying sacred sect, and the Hao Guang sacred sect. I'll tell you, the food of this sect of all times is simply delicious. If you can be redeemed, as long as you can eat a meal, it will definitely not be a loss. Of course, there's another possibility, which is to be recruited and surrendered. From my experience, if you guys aren't the kind of people who are unyielding, it's best for you to quickly surrender. Because back then, there was a guy with purple hair who was very hard and was dragged out to be beaten up every day. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and surrendered. Tell me, isn't he just suffering? The most tragic thing is someone like me. No one has any money to redeem me, and I don't want to surrender. I've been locked in a cell for at least 2 or 3 years. No, I'm afraid it's been 4 or 5 years. Zhao Daoda said as he wiped his tears. Little brat, ghost, who had already woken up but had his chi meridian sealed and was severely injured, laid on the ground and grimaced. If you continue to be noisy, believe it or not, I'll kill you right now. After becoming a prisoner, he didn't even have the chance to die, which made him very annoyed. Now that there was a chattering fellow beside him, he was about to collapse. Compared to the 3 of them, Shadow was much happier. In the cell that was locked up, there was only a stern 9 poison temple palace master. Although the room was filled with spiders and scorpions, as a devil cultivator, he was naturally not afraid. Baldy, Zhao Daoda looked at Dai Lu, who seemed to be facing a wall, and earnestly advised. Jun Patriarch advised you to enter the sect many times. Why are you so stubborn? I am Dai Lu. Even if I die, I won't enter the sect of all times. So, Zhao Daodu raised his thumb and said in admiration, You are the most unyielding man I have ever seen in prison. Creak. At this moment the door of the cell opened. Zhao Daodu quickly jumped down from the bed and hid in the corner. According to his experience, since a new prisoner was locked up, the sect of all times would definitely come to interrogate him. Sure enough, Jun Changshao walked in from outside and waved to the accompanying disciples. Shua, Li Fei and Tianqi strode forward and hung up the heavily injured Aburish man and the other two with iron chains. The three of you. Jun Changshao sat down and laughed. Be lenient if you confess, be strict if you resist. A boorish man tried his best to raise his head and said, We don't know anything, and we won't say anything. If you want to torture us, then give up. Is that so? Jun Changshao really didn't believe it, so he waved his hand and said, Treat the three of you well. Yes. Li Fei and Tianqi clenched their fists and walked over. Just as they were about to make a move, Yao Minjing appeared at the door of the cell and said, Patriarch, can I interrogate them? She heard from Lu Wansher that the sect had captured for demonic cultivator and hurriedly rushed over. Little junior sister, Li Fei said, It's better to leave the interrogation of prisoners to the senior brothers. Jun Changshao held his chin and said, This girl is also a demonic cultivator. It seems like it's not bad to let her interrogate the demonic cultivator. Demonic cultivator? A boorish man and ghost tried their best to turn their necks to look at the door, until they met Yao Minjing's eyes. Their souls seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, and their hands and legs began to tremble uncontrollably. This scene was noticed by Jun Changshao. Girl, I'll leave the three of them to you. Yes. Yao Minjing walked in and said, Two senior brothers, please let them go. Hua hua hua. The iron chains were pulled away. Plop. Plop. The untied Aburish man and ghost directly knelt on the ground, their weak faces filled with fear and trepidation, as if they were very afraid of this little girl who suddenly appeared in the cell. Chapter 946. Aburish man and ghost were heavily injured, and their meridians were sealed. It was understandable that they were paralyzed on the ground, but it was inconceivable that they were kneeling on the ground. Zhao Daoda was stunned. The three brothers were hung up, and the determination in their eyes made him think that they were pure men like Dai Lu. He didn't think that they would be scared so quickly. Or was the girl who came in very strong? Zhao Daoda sneaked a glance, and found that although Yao Minjing was very cute, there was nothing special about her. He couldn't help but think, could it be that these three brothers were persuaded by me? Instead of fighting to the end, why don't they just surrender? Because the little girl has the innate demon body and can invisibly intimidate demonic cultivators? Jun Changshao guessed. Yao Minjing walked over and stood in front of the three kneeling people with her hands behind her back like a supreme ruler. She said, Who gave you the courage to come to my sect of all times to cause trouble? Little junior sister is very cool. Li Fei thought. Boar, Gui Mei and the other two did not dare to raise their heads as they knelt on the ground trembling. Yao Minjing didn't release her cultivation, but her body emitted a supreme majesty that only they could feel. The pressure was so great that they didn't even dare to breathe. Speak. Plop. Plop. A boorish man and the other two were so shocked that they directly collapsed on the ground. Zhao Daoda's mouth twitched. This girl's voice was clearly very sweet. How did it scare them to this extent? Little girl. Jun Changshao transmitted his voice. Ask them who they are first. Okay. Yao Minjing said with a cold face. Who are you? What sect are you from? A boorish man and ghost were fiercely struggling, but the fear that came from the depths of their souls forced them to speak in unison. We are from the Demon Emperor's Gate. Where is the Demon Emperor's Gate? In the Dusky Crow Mountain Range. The three wanted to keep their mouths shut, but their minds were always under the supreme pressure, so they could only choose to confess. Dusky Crow Mountain Range? Jun Changshao thought. One of the three forbidden areas? There were many forbidden areas in the Starfall continent, and the three most terrifying ones, the Dusky Crow Mountain Range was one of them. The Dusky Crow Mountain Range was dark, and there were vicious beasts everywhere. There was even miasma that blocks spiritual sense. Even Wu Huang would be lost if he entered. Exact location, Yao Minjing said. We. 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 The fuck? Jun Changshao muttered to himself. So awesome? It's not easy for you to have your current cultivation. My patriarch is virtuous. Will you submit to him? Yao Minjing asked. Jun Changshao was stunned. He asked the first question, but he didn't say this. The little girl was very perceptive now. Not bad, not bad. A boorish man and ghost's faces became ferocious. They were struggling in their hearts. Obviously, they were very resistant to submitting to Jun Changshao. Answer me. Yao Minjing's eyes flashed with a strange light. It was as if she had turned into the great hero from 10,000 years ago, who dared to fight against heaven and earth, and the sun and moon. A boorish man and the other two were so scared that they fell to the ground. Every hair on their bodies stood on end. This girl's aura was too terrifying. It made them feel like they were at the top of a mountain. After going through the demon valley, Yao Minjing already had the potential of a demon emperor. The 3 pure demon cultivators would definitely be afraid of her. I submit. Hand over your soul origin. When Jun Changshao held the soul origin in his hand, he was a little surprised. He didn't expect the 3 of them to submit so quickly and so thoroughly. Of course, he also realized that Yao Minjing would have such a miraculous effect on demon cultivators. If I had known, I would have taken her to the West Cloud State to find the Demon Emperor's Gate. Then, I would have directly incorporated this force. Jun Changshao thought to himself. Patriarch. Yao Minjing smiled. There is still a woman in prison. I will go and persuade her. Go, Jun Changshao said. He didn't leave the cell. He looked at Dai Lu, who was facing the wall and reflecting, and said, Boy, have you thought it through? Dai Lu didn't say anything. Even if the 3 demon cultivators admitted defeat in front of him, and never joined the sect of all times, their hearts were never shaken. All kinds of protagonists' lives played out here again and again. Only Brother Green Scarf still unswervingly defended the unyielding spirit. Jun Patriarch. Zhao Daoda cried. I want to join the sect of all times. He had said this many times, but he was ignored every time. This time, Jun Changshao said, You have experience in prison. You can be considered a talent. Stay here and enlighten the prisoners. Inform the cafeteria to send 3 meals a day on time. Don't let him starve. Yes. Bring these 3 to Medical Peak, and let Sun Bukong treat them. Yes. Creak. The cell door closed again. Zhao Daodu, who was curled up in the corner, looked dazed. He wasn't distressed by the loss of his 3 cellmates. Instead, after a moment, he began to dance and laugh. Previously, it was 1 meal a day. Now it was 3 meals a day. Happiness. Stay here and enlighten the prisoners? Recalling what Jun Changshao said before he left, Zhao Daoda gradually calmed down and said, Is he thinking highly of me? Jun Patriarch. He stood up and said with a firm gaze, I won't let you down. I will enlighten the prisoners. Baldy. Zhao Daodu appeared in front of Dai Lu and earnestly advised, Jun Patriarch has been very kind to you. As a person, you must know how to be grateful. Don't force yourself. Quickly surrender to the sect of all times. Life is like a cup of tea. It won't be bitter for a lifetime, but it will be bitter for a while. As long as you have a good attitude and don't give up, no matter how far the road is, the bitter will be over and the sweet will be over. Ding! Chicken soup for the soul instructor Zhao Daodu has come online. Yao Minjing was very good at dealing with demonic cultivators. Not long after she entered the women's prison, she brought Shadow's soul origin to the main hall and said, Patriarch, that woman has surrendered. Amazing. Jun Changshao gave her a thumbs up. Without Yao Minjing, who had the innate demonic body, it would be difficult to force the 4 demonic cultivators to surrender. That's right, girl. Jun Changshao said. The Demon Emperor's Gate's master has the innate demonic body. What do you think? Yao Minjing said with certainty. Only this disciple has inherited the innate demonic body. There will not be a second one in the world. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, In that case, this Demon Emperor's Gate deliberately lied to the outside world about the innate demonic body, and then attracted all the demonic cultivators in the world. Patriarch, Yao Minjing said. If you are going to the Dusky Crow Mountain Range, please bring this disciple. She was very curious about who had the guts to pretend to have the innate demonic body that only she had. Yes. Jun Changshao nodded. Suddenly, a system notification sounded in his ears. Ding! Sect members, 500-005-0000. Ding! Sect mission activated. In the mission pavilion, a new sect mission appeared. It meant that as long as the disciple completed it, the sect could be upgraded. Hall Master Li. Jun Changshao transmitted his voice. Notify the certification center, and have them send someone to certify the sect's grade. Chapter 947. Another certification? In the certification center, Yi Tianqing was shocked when he heard the news. It hasn't been long since they were promoted to the 4th rate. According to the time in the Falling Star continent, it had indeed not been long. Elder Zhou, Elder Zhen. Yi Tianqing ordered, go ahead. Yes. Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen left the heavenly mandate imperial city and rushed to the sect of all times. Especially when they thought about being able to eat Lu Wancher's cooking soon, they started drooling. After several certifications, the two of them could see that since the sect of all times had applied again, they definitely had enough strength to pass. They were just going through the motions. The main point was that they could eat the delicious food of the world. If not for their status, the two elders would have liked to come to the sect of all times every few days to eat. The next day, Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen arrived at the sect of all times. When they saw the tall mountains, they were deeply shocked. They had been to this sect many times. Each time there were different changes. This time, the changes were even more intense. They could even smell the heritage of a large sect. After the terrain modification, although the sect of all times was still a 4th-rate sect, in terms of scale and environment, it was comparable to a 1st-rate or 2nd-rate sect. Of course, the top power was not weak either. After all, there were cultivators like the Purple King and Ding Xingwang, who were at the level of Wu Sheng. The core disciples, led by Li Qingyang, had all broken through to the level of Wu Huang. Not to mention that they could shake the entire continent with the stomp of their feet. At least in terms of overall strength, they were not inferior to 2nd-rate or 3rd-rate sections. This was just the beginning. As more disciples entered the peak of Martial King and obtained the Surge Talisman, they would enter the dimensional battlefield for practical experience. There would only be more and more Emperor-level cultivators. There were as many King-level cultivators as dogs, and Emperor-level cultivators were everywhere. This sarcastic remark might be foreseen in the sect of all times. Both of you, Jun Gosheng smiled and said, do you want to be certified first or eat first? Eat. Elder Zhou and Elder Zhen said in unison. In the past, they could resist the urge to be certified first. Now they simply stopped pretending. Let's do it. Just for the food. Please. Lu Wancher personally cooked and prepared a table full of delicacies. After the two of them ate, their souls were sublimated. The sky became bluer, and the mountains became taller. Jun Patriarch. Elder Zhou said, let's get it verified. Please. Jun Changshao was the first to walk out of the cafeteria. Then, he gathered all the upper echelons and disciples of the sect, and began the strength assessment. Jun Patriarch. After an hour of rigorous testing, Elder Zhou handed over a token with the words 3rd-rate engraved on it and said, congratulations on your sect's promotion to a 3rd-rate sect. Thank you. Jun Changshao took it. Ding. Congratulations to the host for upgrading the sect to 3rd-rate. The reward is 10,000 achievement points and 10,000 contribution points. Ding. Sect contribution points, 393,005,0000. Ding. Sect achievement value, 222,005,0000. After hearing the notification, Jun Changshao opened the system panel. When he saw that the sect had been upgraded from 4th-rate to 3rd-rate, a bright smile appeared on his face. After many years of hard work, he had turned a 9th-rate sect into one of the top 3rd-rate sects in the Falling Star continent. He felt a sense of accomplishment. Beep. Beep. Jun Changshao yelled. Let's have a banquet tonight to celebrate the sect's promotion to third rate. All right. Lu Wanshur led the cafeteria members and started to get busy. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the kitchen, Ma Yongning and Lin Yao stood on opposite sides. They looked at each other and quickly pulled out their kitchen knives. Instantly, a crisscrossing light appeared. Swish, swish, swish. Outside, Qian Boudoir was working hard to clean the ingredients for the banquet. Although the process was a little boring, he was very happy doing it. The little guy had completely adapted to the life in the sect of all times. Every day, he would wake up before the rooster crows to clean the ingredients for his fellow sect members. My hands were born to wash vegetables. The cafeteria members were busy preparing for the banquet. Jun Changshao came to the medicine hall and greeted the 4 injured demon cultivators. He said it was a greeting, but it was actually a question. For example, what kind of force was the Demon Emperor's Gate? How many disciples did it have? How many strongholds did it have? A boorish man and the others, who had their soul origins controlled, could only tell the truth, although they were unwilling. Protector? Jun Changshao touched his chin and said, I don't have a position in the sect of all times yet. Under normal circumstances, a large sect had positions such as the Patriarch, Deputy Patriarch, Elder, Protector, Hall Master, and so on. The sect of all times currently only had elders and hall masters. Not to mention a protector, there wasn't even a deputy patriarch. A protector was obviously lower than an elder. In layman's terms, it was similar to a hired thug. A boorish man and ghosts group of 4 had such a position in the Demon Emperor's Gate. That was why they were the main force in the battle against the righteous sects in the West Cloud State. Once the upper limit of members is raised, I can consider letting the 4 of them become protectors of the sect of all times. Jun Changshao muttered. There weren't many demon cultivators in the sect. It wasn't a bad idea to take in a boorish man and the others. Patriarch. Li Luoxia walked into the hall and said, Elder Jiang sent news that the Demon Emperor's Gate's base might be in the Dusk Crow Mountain range. Although Jun Changshao had already heard about it from a boorish man and the others, he was still very confident that Jiangye could find this crucial information. Tell Elder Jiang not to enter blindly. Jun Changshao said. The reason why the Darkness sect was a headache was because they were always hidden in the dark. Now that they knew the location of the stronghold, there was nothing to worry about. Demon Emperor's Gate. Jun Changshao leaned back in his chair and rubbed his fingers as he said with a smile. Wait until this king and the entire sect have a good drink. Then, I'll look for you to have some fun. When the time comes, don't admit defeat. His smile was very scary. Night came. A bonfire flickered on the practice field, illuminating the surroundings. Rows of tables were placed side by side, filled with delicious food and wine. Open the wine. Pung pung pung. The seal was removed, and the disciples filled the cups. Jun Changshao raised his cup and said, May our sect exist forever and live as long as the heavens. Exist forever and live as long as the heavens. Gulp. Gulp. All the disciples drank a bowl of wine. Junior brother Yi, Tianqi said in surprise. Why aren't you drinking? Yi Xingchen said indifferently. Not interested. Ha ha ha. Li Fei laughed. Junior brother Yi must be afraid. If you drink too much, you'll dance around the fire like last time. Night Emperor was very embarrassed about that matter. Hearing him say it, he wanted to flip the table. Junior brother. Li Fei came over with a bowl of wine and smiled. The sect becoming a third-rate sect is a joyous matter. You should drink some, right? Of course. If you're afraid of losing your composure, then I won't force you to drink. This was really touching a sore spot. Yi Anyo was even angrier. He suddenly stood up and picked up a bowl of wine and said with a cold face, Drink. Come. Gulp gulp. Again. Come. Senior brother Yi and senior brother Li are fighting. All the disciples gathered around. Jun Changshao, who was sitting in front of the hall, saw Yi Xingchen being so wild and said happily, This damned Sundara is changing bit by bit. But, he looked at Lu Qianqian, who was sitting alone at the table, and shook his head. She doesn't seem to have changed. Senior sister Lu. Yao Minjing rested her chin on the table and looked at her senior brothers drinking to their heart's content. She said pitifully, "I want to drink too." Lu Wanshi, who also rested her chin on the table, said, "Why wouldn't I want to?" Sigh. In the prison, Zhao Daoda stood at the window and looked at the happy sect of all time's disciples outside. He said enviously, "When can I join this happy and harmonious sect?" Creak. The prison door opened. One black and two black brought in a few plates of delicious food and a jar of wine, and said, "This is a reward from the sect." Thank you, thank you." Zhao Daoda quickly ran over and sniffed the food and wine. His soul immediately floated to the sky and stood shoulder to shoulder with Li Tianshang. Useless. Dai Lu, who had been facing the wall, stood up and sat in front of the table. He picked up his chopsticks and started eating. During this period, as long as someone brought food to him, he would eat it without hesitation. However, he wasn't tempted by the food and remained firm. Damn! You ate all the food again. The banquet didn't end until late at night. Yi Xingchen and Li Fei drank 2 jars of wine, and then staggered back to their residence. The next day, they were found lying outside the outhouse. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.